Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Welcome to the Senate Finance Committee. Today is Thursday, March 12th. We're going to hear 10 bills, and we're going to start with Senator Corderman, who's here to present the Washington County Senator's Bill, so Senate Bill 714.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Found my glasses here. All right. Ready? Thank you, members of the committee. For the record, Senator Paul Corderman, representing District 2, Washington and Frederick counties. Before us today is Senate Bill 714, Washington County Mobile Food Service Facilities and Semi-Permanent Food Service Facilities, Toilet and Lavatory Facilities. That's a mouthful. The reason for this bill pretty much is to provide regulatory clarity for emerging non-traditional food service operations. This bill will clearly define the mobile and semi-permanent food service facilities and update how certain health requirements apply by helping to ensure the public health standards remain strong while recognizing how these businesses actually operate. So the reason this bill came to us, came before our delegation here during the interim. We had 3 different businesses. Actually, each one of them have submitted, we uploaded testimony from them, letters of support. It happened back during the summer. These are semi-permanent locations. Think like basically, one of them's an ice cream trailer basically, and it doesn't move. It probably moved at one point, but it has an awning built off of it. There's walls built around it. It doesn't move. It's, whatever. It's been in existence for decades. Well, the health department came out and shut them down because they had a picnic table. Because apparently they were, the way that the semi-permanent code reads is they have to be able to have lavatory facilities and sinks and all this other stuff. This facility has been in business for decades. The fact that you can't buy an ice cream and sit down at a picnic table, we felt kind of a little bit, just didn't make a whole lot of sense. And so what that snowballed into is there was 2 other businesses that were shut down also. A coffee facility, same thing, a semi-permanent coffee truck that has, being a picnic table. They removed their picnic table. Then customers start bringing temporary seats, which actually probably exacerbated the situation. The third one is a donut facility, Home Run Donuts. So you get the idea here of what the situation is. Our county operates as a Board of Health. We went to them first. They wanted to fix it locally. They were unable to. We spoke with the Department of Health. They just said, hey, we're just enforcing the statute as it is. However, if the statute were to change, it would be a different story. We talked to the State Health Department. This is how we came before you here today. So again, it's a local bill. It has unanimous support from our county commissioners, has bipartisan unanimous support from our delegation. We would hope that you would help us here and request a favorable report.
Do I have any questions for Senator Corderman? I think we'll see it on the voting list soon.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Next, we have Senator Gallion, Senate Bill 849, Consumer Protection Agricultural Equipment Warranties. And you have a few members, Tyler Huff, Lindsey Thompson, and Grayson Middleton can come to the table with you. You can start when you're ready, Senator.
All right. Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Finance Committee members. For the record, Senator Jason Gallion, representing District 35, Harford and Cecil counties, to introduce SB 849, which establishes the Agricultural Equipment Warranty Enforcement Act to provide Maryland farmers with clear and enforceable protection when ag equipment fails under warranty. Agricultural equipment is among the most significant capital investments that farmers make. Modern farm machinery is complex, technologically advanced, and essential for maintaining productivity during narrow planting and harvest windows. When equipment fails and cannot be repaired promptly, the financial consequences for farmers can be severe. SB 849 addresses this problem by creating a structured process for resolving warranty disputes involving ag equipment. The bill requires consumers to provide written notice of defects or nonconformities to manufacturers and provides clear procedures for correcting those issues. If defects cannot be repaired within the warranty period, the bill ensures farmers have access to meaningful remedies, including replacement equipment or a refund under certain conditions. Importantly, the bill also establishes enforcement mechanisms. If a manufacturer, distributor, or authorized dealer fails to comply with the requirements in bad faith, courts may award damages to the consumer. This accountability ensures manufacturers have strong incentives to resolve warranty issues in a prompt and fair way. Farmers rely on dependable equipment to operate efficiently. A single breakdown during planting or harvest season can jeopardize an entire crop cycle. By clarifying warranty obligations and creating enforceable remedies, SB 849 strengthens consumer protections while promoting fair dealing in the agricultural equipment market. Additionally, the bill defines agricultural equipment in a targeted way, applying primarily to self-propelled vehicles designed for farming, so think of tractors, combines, that kind of thing, and excluding smaller equipment such as lawn tractors or machines under 25 horsepower. This ensures the legislation focuses on the types of equipment most critical to agricultural operations. SB 849 represents a balanced and practical step to support Maryland farmers and ensure they receive the warranty protections they are promised when purchasing this essential equipment. There is one amendment to the bill that the House sponsor worked out with John Deere that would alter the court-awarded damages from $10,000 to $5,000 and removes one of the action provisions. I thank you for your time and requestfully I'd like to have a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. We do see the amendment. Thank you for submitting that.
Yep.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Lindsay Thompson, here today in support of this legislation on behalf of the Maryland Grain Producers Association. As you heard the senator say, Maryland's farmers, especially grain farmers, rely on highly specialized equipment in order to plant, harvest, and transport their crop. These tractors, combines, and implements often cost hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, and cannot be easily replaced at a farmer's expense. When equipment covered under a warranty repeatedly fails and cannot be repaired in a timely manner, the consequences can be severe. So this is likened to like a lemon law for cars, but imagine it being something that is required for you to do your job and do so in a timely manner. Missing even a few days during planting or harvest season can significantly reduce yields and overall farm income. These farmers rely on the manufacturer warranties to ensure that they perform as intended when they are needed. This bill establishes a clear and fair process for addressing these warranty issues. And if I could wrap up just with a brief story. So this bill was actually inspired by a young farmer in Delegate Jacobs' district who purchased a piece of equipment that he needed to feed his cattle every single day. And within the first couple of weeks of getting that equipment, it did not operate. And I think it went back and forth to the dealership approximately 6 times over the period of a couple of years. Same issue. They would fix it, send it back. Within a couple of weeks, it wasn't working again, and it was just this vicious cycle until ultimately his warranty expired. And now he is stuck with a piece of equipment that does not operate and has no remedy to replace it. And so with that, we would ask for your favorable report. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Grayson Middleton with Delmarva Chicken Association. We're the trade association representing the meat chicken growers, companies, and allied businesses in Maryland, the Eastern Shore of Virginia, and Delaware. Here today in strong support of SB 849. Me too, mostly, but also to say, equipment is particularly critical for our poultry growers. They are handling livestock, and so it's not just a matter of, for them, income, which is obviously very important, but also the welfare of the animal. So, some of those pieces of equipment, we have fans, feeders, heating apparatuses, sensors. These are all critical to maintaining the health and welfare of the animal, and even a short glitch or malfunction in that equipment can result in serious mortality events. And so, again, this is part of the farmer's livelihood. It's also good for the animal, and we want to make sure that they are afforded the same recourse as the normal Maryland consumer. So, with that, we urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, Tyler Huff, Maryland Farm Bureau, here today in support of SB 849. It's been said the equipment is extremely expensive and farmers rely on this equipment in a timely manner. And it's the unfortunate nature about all things. Sometimes there's just a dud in the production line and there's nothing the manufacturer can do about it. There's nothing the farmer can do about it. And this bill puts in that added protection and that added safety net for the farmer to be able to rely on that equipment, be able to know that their investment is going to give them the piece of equipment that they need to be able to perform the job at hand when they need to do that job at hand. So with that, the members of the Maryland Farm Bureau respectfully urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. I am surprised to see that there are no unfavorables. Did a good job. Do you have any questions for this panel? Senator Mounts.
Thank you for that, Madam Chair, and thank you for that question, because that was one thing I wanted to follow up on, just to confirm. Have the John Deere's, International Harvesters of the world, they're and that sort of thing, they're all supporting or not opposing this?
They are not opposing that. You saw the one amendment, I actually do have a copy. It should be the committee that was worked out with John Deere. But I'd just like to really thank Delegate Jay Jacobs, who he's been working on this for a couple years, and he's honestly been the lead driver on this, and I appreciate the partnership with him, and I'm honored that he asked me to try to carry this through on the Senate side.
I just wanted to check to find out the phones were going to blow up tomorrow. They're not. So
They haven't yet,
thank you.
so we'll see.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Any other questions? Seeing no questions, that ends the hearing on Senate Bill 849. I think Senator Kagan is here. Did Senator Kagan come in? Yes, there she is. Senate Bill 695. Excuse me, Consumer Protection, Driver's License, and ID Card Swiping. You have people you want to bring up with you?
If you don't mind, Madam Chair, Marceline White, and then if the Assistant Attorney General is within hearing distance, Steve Sakamoto Wengel, I saw him in the hallway.
I thought I saw him come in.
There we go.
We didn't sign up.
Okay, just written. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the Senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. Glad to be back in finance. This year, I haven't had very many visits to you all. This bill is about consumer protection and privacy. I want to start by thanking our wonderful colleague, Senator Guile, for joining me on this bill. All 50 states have privacy and rules about what can be scanned, swiped, retained, stored, or sold. Maryland's laws are frankly a little weaker than in my opinion, than they should be. And this bill is a very narrow effort to try to modify and update that. We carved out reasonable opportunities for swiping. So to verify the age of someone who wants to go in and consume alcohol, to verify identity, and that's fine. And some states are even changing it to go into a cannabis location. The returning an item without a receipt, for paying by a check or credit card, so I know that you're who you are. But the problem is, colleagues, that once your driver's license or ID has been scanned, we don't know how it's going to be stored, what it's going to be used for, when and whether it would ever be sold or deleted. And this just puts some guardrails around that. We know that we are living in an increasingly connected world, and we all have had experiences of being aware of hacks, and millions of consumers are hacked. And so where we can provide protection for that, I think that would be a smart idea. I want to flag, since they're not joining us at the table, the Office of the Attorney General even shared a story by someone in their office about having their ID swiped and how hard it was to get that data removed from the database. There's 17 states that have legislation that's similar to what we're proposing, and they are red and blue, and they are all over the country. I'm going to read a few. Florida, Illinois, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Oregon, and Texas, as well as our neighbors in Virginia, have legislation that is similar to this or stronger. This would prevent swiping an ID except for valid purposes. And I talked about authenticating an ID or verifying age, also preventing fraud or crime. Law enforcement operations, obviously law enforcement should be able to verify or collect that information. Financial transactions, to open up a bank account, to get a loan, to rent a car, to lease a car. All of those completely reasonable. But with these exceptions, there should be a 60-day retention rate for crime retention or fraud purposes. Government entities may swipe with explicit consent, or if it was lawfully confiscated, to register emergency assistance or as a part of a court order. There is no fiscal cost to this. And then I just want to acknowledge the Maryland bankers that in their testimony, they put in an amendment that we're fine with for your consideration, Madam Chair. And the other one that I want to flag is the Consumer Healthcare Products Association. They submitted as unfavorable, but then they said they'd be fine with the bill with this amendment. And we thought their amendment was totally fine. And it's basically about federal regulations for drugs that need, what's the right word? You guys are experts at this, but need accountability. So we want to make sure that we're in compliance with that. There is a two-word amendment that we were asked and we're fine with on page 3, line 16, and it's literally inserting the word security. And so if there is a walking into a school, a child care center, or other, the person uses a fraud prevention service company or a security system. And we think that's clarifying, and we're fine with that. So other than that, we think this is a modest, narrow bill that will be consumer protection and offer Marylanders a little bit more privacy in keeping in similar ways that other states have done that. And I'm delighted that Marceline White is here to join me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Marceline White, Executive Director, Economic Action. We're pleased to be here in support of Senate Bill 695, and I want to thank the sponsors for introducing the bill. I just want to take a few minutes to explain why we think it's so important, and that is really because, as you all know, driver's licenses contain important personal identifying information, but each has a magnetic strip that works like a credit card on the back of your driver's license, and the information can be swiped and stored. And that is one of the leading reasons for this kind of identity theft. Indeed, like someone's driver's license can be sold on the black market for $150, that information. So in Maryland today, new account fraud is one of the most common kinds of fraud we're seeing. An FTC report said that Maryland had 47,436 reports of fraud, with an average loss of $399, and imposter scams were the leading cause of fraud. Driver's license identity theft is one of those things that fuels this kind of imposter scam, this kind of swiping. So we think this is really important. We believe that the carve-outs are reasonable, and this is a narrowly tailored bill to address a problem that we are seeing increasingly in Maryland, and that really does affect us because it is very hard once you've had identity theft, as I'm sure you all know from your constituents, to redress it. So for all of these reasons, we urge a favorable report on Senate Bill 695. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any questions for this panel? Senator Hershey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm looking at my driver's license right now, and I'm looking for this important identifying information. Honestly, all I see is my name, my address, my birth date, height, weight.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's what that information we're trying to not let get out?
Well, do you want to finish your question, then we'll answer?
Yeah, I mean, I was asking what is the important information that we're trying not to have out there?
So I'll start and then
Yep.
toss it to Marceline.
Yep.
So first off, most people don't want their height, their weight, their organ donation status, their driving restrictions, their home address, their driver's license number. All of that is personal identifying information.
Mm-hmm.
But as Marceline White talked about, it's the strip on the magnetic strip on the other side that contains even more.
And I would just add, actually, your birth date. When we talk to consumers, even like on Facebook or something, we recommend you don't put your entire birth date, because that's one of the things people often use to steal someone's identity. That's enough information.
And your photo.
Protocol committee about that. They announce birthdays on the Senate floor all the time.
There you go. Staying out of that one.
You
but-
know?
Senator Hershey, one more thing. While our photos, our faces may be pretty easy to find online, some
Right.
people really would like to be under the radar and not have any likeness of them that then can be used by artificial intelligence to indicate something that is untrue.
Okay. Marceline, you mentioned the swipe part on the
Yep.
back here. Is there different information on that?
It's one of the things people can use when you on the dark web, like you can swipe the information and it's used like a credit card. So it's how they store the information. And I think that's part of the other issue, is that if you hand that over and it's stored, somebody swipes it, that information and that data can be stored. And as we know, there have been a number of data breaches and leaks. And so that, again, has all of that information, which can be sold on the dark web. And like I said, it's not, people pay $150 a go for that kind of license. So
Okay.
that kind of info.
One more thing, that the bill mentioned biometrics. There is any of that? Oh, we're all looking at our driver's license
I
now.
know. I did not bring mine up, sorry.
The bill mentioned personal information include biometric data. Fingerprints, I thought I saw somewhere, I'm not sure, but yeah, fingerprint. But that's not on a driver's license, is it?
No. It's not the driver's license.
I mean, sometimes we give that information so we can get in and out quicker.
Got to clarify, biometrics includes height and weight.
Oh, that's what that is.
So I think that's what it means
Okay.
in this instance.
All right, and then
If I
finally.
could just add on for a second.
Yes.
So this does, you flagged that it does include fingerprint on,
Right.
in the bill on page 2, lines 22 through 25.
Yep.
There's today's laws, and then there's new technology, or different kinds of ID cards, or different types of documents that could be scanned. And so I think there's also the anticipating.
Okay. And then finally, with all the exemptions that are in the bill now, who are we actually expecting that will now be able to request and utilize an actual handing over a driver's license to somebody?
Well, I flagged the Attorney General's office experience of, they were visiting, and it's in in the written testimony. They went in to go look at an apartment, and they were asked whether the staff person could see the driver's license. And see is the operative verb, and then they scanned it without permission. And this person had to work to get it removed. I once went in to a phone store, a phone repair, and I said, this isn't working on my phone. They said, sure, I need to see your ID. So I went and I got my ID, and again, while I'm talking to one staffer, one employee, the other person scanned it, excuse me, and I said, I did not give you permission to scan it, and I stood there and watched him delete it. So I don't know what my cell phone company wants to do with my data. And he acknowledged, in Virginia, we're not allowed to do this, but in Maryland, we can.
Right. Okay. So merchants could still do it as long as it's not.
Lots of merchants. Target wants to do it, and they got hacked several years ago, a huge hack. There are a lot of places. Home Depot, Lowe's, some of those places. And it makes sense if you want to buy some regulated product, but it doesn't make sense that we don't know how it's stored, how safely it is, and whether and when it's deleted. This would put a 60-day time limit.
Okay. Does this require any regulations to be put forth by the department?
Promulgated. I'm happy to talk to you about that if you've got ideas.
I know, I'm just wondering if anything needs to be done to let merchants know that.
I suspect that the retailers associations and others, again, all 50 states have some regulation on this. Ours is just not as strong as it could be. And I read the list of other states that are similar, and there are many that are much stronger than ours.
Okay. Thank you both very much.
Thank you,
Madam
Senator
Chair.
Hershey.
Senator Mounts?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And are you aware that MBA sells all that information? So you can go to MBA and buy all that?
So are you saying MBA, the Maryland Bankers Association, or
I'm
MBA,
sorry,
the Motor Vehicles Administration?
MBA.
Thank you,
MBA.
Motor Vehicles. So so it can be made available to the public, some information, but not all of it.
Okay. And then along the lines of the questions you just answered, specifically, have the retailers commented on this bill? Because I didn't see their testimony.
Thank you for asking, Senator Mounts. This bill has been public for a very long time. The fact that they didn't submit favorable with amendment, or unfavorable must mean that they just didn't worry about it, didn't care about it much. They're usually pretty diligent about hanging out in this committee. So this is narrower than some versions of the bill that I've brought in the past. So I suspect that they thought this was reasonable. And again, the bankers and the Consumer Product Commission, and then the one word adding the word security.
Okay, well, that answers my questions.
Thank you,
I
Senator
believe.
Mounts.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I don't see any other questions. Thank you both.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Madam Chair, colleagues. See you later.
We're going to bring up your favorable with amendments, which is Robert Enton and Evan Richards. I don't see Mr. Enton again. He must have had a better deal like the last time.
He won't let me sign up by myself. I don't understand that. Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. Record, my name is Evan Richards, here on behalf of the Maryland Bankers Association. Again, we appreciate the sponsor's willingness to accept our amendment. This all comes down to bank compliance. Compliance officers are the ones who keep their bosses and their banks out of trouble. Really, the language that pointed us in the direction of requesting this amendment, page 4, lines 13 through 16, may use the information only to prevent fraud or to affect, administer, or enforce a transaction. So the first question I get from our bank compliance officers is, what is the transaction? Obviously, loans, deposits, they have that separate carve out. When you talk about things like safe deposit boxes, maybe credit card cash advances, if a bank has investment services, notary services, things where they may be collecting this personal identifying information, and they just want to make sure that they're not running afoul of anything. That's the main reason why that we're requesting this full exemption. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't see any questions. I don't know why Mr. Enton won't let you sign up by yourself.
One of these days, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Evan. So no other questions. That ends the hearing on Senate Bill 695. Let's go to Senator Harris and Senate Bill 922, Collective Bargaining, Local Government Employees and Public Employee Relations Act. And you have Christian Goebel and David Marr. Thank you.
Thank you. Great afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and awesome committee members. For the record, Senator Kevin M. Harris, representing Legislative District 27, which is Prince George's, Charles, and Calvert County, here to present Senate Bill 922, Collective Bargaining, Local Government Employee and Public Employee Relations Act. As many of you may be aware, some of our public employees in counties and municipal government currently have collective bargaining rights. However, this right does not exist for all local government employees. Senate Bill 922 extends collective bargaining rights to employees of county and municipal governments throughout our state. Senate Bill 922 does not mandate collective bargaining. Rather, it enables collective bargaining for all local government employees. The decision to organize and collective bargain should rest with the employees. Additionally, subject to certain exemptions, this legislation applies the Public Employee Relations Act to the local government. In 2023, the General Assembly made significant progress towards streamlining our public sector collective bargaining laws by passing the Public Employee Relations Act. This legislation consolidated various public sectors collective bargaining statutes for K-12, state and higher education workers to streamline process and procedures for labor relations. Additionally, it created the Public Employee Relations Board. Senate Bill 922 accounts for the expanded of the Public Employee Relations Board by creating a deputy director position. Finally, Senate Bill 922 grants local government that have existing collective bargaining laws and want a one-year phase-in for them to seek certain exemptions from this bill. This legislation continues the trend towards streamlining our public sector labor relations. And for this reason, I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 922 and turn it over to my panel.
Good afternoon, Chair Beidel, Vice Chair Hayes, members of the committee. My name is Christian Goebel. I serve as the Legislative and Political Coordinator with AFSCME Maryland Council 3, here today to testify in strong support of Senate Bill 922. Our council represents approximately 55,000 public service workers across Maryland at all levels of government, including city, county, state, and higher education. As you've heard, this legislation will extend collective bargaining rights to all county and municipal employees throughout our state. This is critically important as approximately half of the counties and many more municipalities have minimal or no collective bargaining laws. Maryland has a history of incremental progress towards expanding collective bargaining rights. From 1968 through 2024, various groups of public employees throughout our state attained collective bargaining rights through the General Assembly, including K through 12, state, higher education, and county public library workers. In recent years, our state has made significant progress updating our public sector collective bargaining laws. Beginning in 2021, the General Assembly passed legislation authorizing collective bargaining for community college employees. This legislation modernized our public sector labor relations with streamlined election procedures and uniform unfair labor practice provisions. Again, as Senator Harris was speaking to, in 2023, we made additional progress with the passage of the Public Employee Relations Act. This merged 3 different public sector labor boards into one Public Employee Relations Board. It consolidated various public sector labor laws into one statute addressing certification procedures, unfair labor practices, and the rights of labor management employees. This legislation will continue to streamline our various public sector labor laws across the state. It applies the Public Employees Relations Act as a floor to our local governments, but enables flexibility by permitting local jurisdictions to adopt local collective bargaining laws subject to approval by the PERB. The PERB would retain jurisdiction over local governments regarding certification of elections and addressing unfair labor practices. This practice is consistent with other states that also utilize public employee relations boards. For those reasons, we urge you to issue a favorable report on this legislation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is David Marr. I'm an attorney at Wright Ryan & Marr. I represent AFSCME Council 3, as well as other unions in the state representing public sector employees, including county and local government employees. I want to talk a little bit about the features in this bill that addresses counties and municipalities that have mature, modern collective bargaining laws in place already and might have had bargaining units existing there for many years that are used to working with those counties. The bill creates effectively an opt-out procedure for those counties and municipalities where the Public Employee Relations Board would review their existing collective bargaining laws. If it finds that it meets the floor set up by this legislation, the board would enter an order essentially exempting that county or municipality from various proceedings. The PERB would retain control over unfair labor practices and unit certification decisions. That might help the counties and municipalities because it will be cheaper than the way they are currently doing those things, which requires hiring an arbitrator. But it is this bill's attempt to take into account that different counties and municipalities might have different needs, might have, there might be differences that require some local adaptations, local control, and provides, as long as those counties or municipalities meets that floor and can show that they meet that floor in their county code or municipal code, that they are then opted out and can craft those things internally. The bill also creates a phase-in procedure for those counties and municipalities that do already have those collective bargaining laws in place. You can see that in Section 2 of the bill towards the very end, where there's a one-year phase-in for those municipalities and counties to actually go and pursue that opt-out petition prior to the bill coming online for them. For all the other counties, the floor would be in place, and collective bargaining and, employees could go and seek to have a union certified or not. It's their choice, and proceed along that path. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't see any questions for this panel. Thank you very much for your testimony. You do have a few unfavorables, and 2 are here to testify, Carrington Anderson and Bill George.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Bill George with the Maryland Municipal League here today in opposition to Senate Bill 922. I sound like a broken record when I come in here talking about the differences between local governments as employers and our private sector counterparts, or even in this state, or in this instance, differences from the state as an employer, just in terms of its scale. There are currently some municipalities that offer certain employees, we're talking law enforcement, public works, fire, to collectively bargain, but they do so at their own discretion, going into that process knowing full well the potential cost implications and other responsibilities that come along with it. This bill would flip that discretion to the employee and place significant financial administrative burden on local governments, some of which are ill-equipped to take on this responsibility. To be clear, the bill does not require that local government employees collectively bargain or join a union. However, I have a feeling that many would should the bill go through. So I'm going to talk a little bit about managing multiple contracts. As you can imagine, municipalities and counties have different categories of employees that would fall under the purview of different unions. So that would come along with managing and negotiating different contracts on different timelines. We're talking these contracts are time-consuming to negotiate and very detail-oriented. We're looking at terms, inquiries, grievances, performance evaluations, and impasse options. This level of expertise is oftentimes not available at the local government level at the moment, and would require adding staff or consultancy service. Allowing local government employees to collectively bargain is simply not a viable option for some of our smaller members. This bill removes the local flexibility that currently exists when you ask for an unfavorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Carrington Anderson here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties in respectful opposition to Senate Bill 922. I want to adopt and echo everything my colleague from MML said. Some additional points to add is local governments do think that these decisions, these policies are best handled and determined locally based on the community needs, the fiscal capacity of the county. This bill removes the local discretion and adds a state framework. I want to talk about the option to file an exemption under this bill. So a county can petition for or a local government can petition for an exemption if they have a local policy that allows collective bargaining. That sounds like it adds some flexibility. It does for the composition of the units, but however, if a government does petition for this, they are forced between deciding two things. They either have to establish procedures for allowing public employees to strike, or they have to establish procedures for binding arbitration. Both of those are problematic and concerning for local governments. Having a public employee have the right to strike is going to have an impact on operations, whether that's fire and rescue personnel, whether that's the employees who pick up your trash, the employees who clean your water, that is concerning for local governments. The other option with binding arbitration, this cedes local budgetary authority and the policy discretion to a third party who may not be familiar with the local budget capacity and who also is an unelected official who doesn't have the same accountability as a local government official. So it's for these reasons that we'd respectfully ask for an unfavorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any questions for Carrington? I do. Senator Senator Reedy.
I think his questions and mine would probably be a little different. Well, maybe. I don't know. So am I correct in this bill? We don't really allow county employees to strike in Maryland.
Correct.
So this bill would open that window?
Yes, so a county has, or a local government has the option to petition to be exempt, and if they choose to do that, then they have to allow procedures either to strike or for binding arbitration.
Yeah, between those two choices, I think binding would be better, but aren't these things all, so in both of your clients, your organization you represent, right now they have the ability to negotiate any of this, right? Or is it illegal for a county or a municipality to negotiate these? If they wanted to negotiate on this, could they do this on their own without a state bill?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that currently there's about 16 municipalities that allow for certain subsets of their employees to join a union and collectively bargain certain compensation and benefit-related issues. And these, like I said, these are typically, law enforcement, fire, public works, engineers, electricians, those types.
But this bill would open up to all county or state, city municipal employees, correct?
Correct.
So in the town of, the town of Union Bridge that might have, a handful of employees in my district that service the needs of the town could unionize and then strike possibly over wages for a town that has a budget of a very small annual budget.
That is certainly a possibility.
There's no difference. This bill doesn't make any distinction between a large county and a small town, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. I don't see any other questions. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Chair.
This ends the hearing on Senate Bill 922. Now we have Senator Harris again, Senate Bill 932, and he's the sponsor with no panel. Thank you, Senator.
All righty. Back to back. Senate Bill 932. Once again, Chair, Vice Chair, members of this awesome committee. For the record, Senator Kevin M. Harris, representing Legislative District 27, which includes Prince George's, Charles, and Calvert County. Here to present Senate Bill 932. Consumer Protection Social Media Platforms Display of User Location. In the age of social media, it has become increasingly evident that in order to increase platform engagement, social media companies continue to take advantage of and manipulate users through algorithm that keeps them hooked. The algorithm is designed to be addictive, presenting users with divisive, polarizing, and often extreme content. At the same time, we know that a large portion of this most extreme social media content comes from pages that are not located in the United States. International actors are looking to profit from user engagement at the expense of public trust and a democratic stability in the United States. Senate Bill 932 requires a person operating a social media platform to display the general geographic location of the content produced by adult users. The general geographic locations refers to the user's city and country, not the precise geolocation. Further, Senate Bill 932 seeks to protect kids by exempting minors from having to display their location. Senate Bill 932 seeks to protect free speech while simultaneously empowering mariners to know where the content they are viewing originates. This bill will provide transparency for mariners so that they can better assess whether the content they are viewing was created by good faith actors or a foreign entity. Senate Bill 932 will protect our Democratic Institute by helping social media users identify disinformation produced by international actors. For this reason, I urge a favorable report on Senate Bill 932.
Thank you. Second bite at the apple for me too, but I actually really like the intent behind this bill. I think when Twitter went to showing you whether someone was in the country or out of the country, I thought that was a great reform because we saw extreme content and extreme on sort of both ends of the spectrum. A lot of it was coming from Asia, Russia, other places, and trying to get people all upset. And so my only question, though, is, and there's some opposition from groups. Number one, how could we enforce this on all social media platforms when we're just a state? This just seems like something that might need to be more federal. But number two, the concerns about privacy and other things, I wonder if we were able to find a way that it could be enforced in the state, if we could make it so that it's just whether you're in the country or not to protect people's privacy. I think even that would go a long way, knowing that something, is not from the United States. So you at least know I'm getting some crazy story or something, and it turns out it's not even from here. I mean, I don't know if you're amenable to that. I'm not sure if there's we passed something a long time ago, years ago, to try to restrict how Google did ads, and Google's like, great, we're just not going to let you advertise here in political advertising. So have you gotten any feedback on any ideas on how we could assuage that problem?
Absolutely. So no, I haven't got any feedback. So let me see if I can try to answer some of your questions here. So let's go to the first thing you mentioned. That's the reason why we went forward with this bill, because the social media companies actually did this, right? They actually were doing it. They were actually providing the geolocations and the countries for which these posts were taking place. They removed them.
Yeah.
And so what we're saying is, no, we need to put them back, right? Now, can we do it? I believe we can do it. Should it be something that the federal should actually do as well? Absolutely. But for me, I'm not a federal elected official. I represent the state of Maryland, so I'm here to try to protect and do the best we can for the state of Maryland. But for your following piece, I think we can, for the first step, can look at just doing the actual country. Because at the end of the day, what we need to make sure and ensure that we're doing is protecting the mariners from outside entities, because there's so much going on in the world right now. And what we don't need to do is have folks, mental capacity be affected by someone that's not even in this country, that they're going back and forth about something that's, mainly
Yeah, it's
focused
not
on
restricting speech, it's just letting you know where it's coming from.
Correct, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just so I want to make sure I understand the bill. Is that primarily, it's the geolocation showing where the adult is that's using the social media platform?
Yeah, so it's showing once they make a post. Once they make a post, it'll let you know, hey, this person, the post originated from the United States or originated from, Russia.
And then the rest of the enforcement provisions.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? Thank you, Senator.
Appreciate it.
That ends the hearing on Senate Bill 932. Senator Kramer, would you like to present Senate Bill 880, Part-Time Employment Pilot Program? You want to bring Katrina Kugel up to the table? Yes. And we'll get your virtual, your two virtual people. There. Okay, we have one. Which one? Monica. Okay, so we have Monica on virtually, Senator.
All righty then. Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I have two bills, and actually my last two bills of the session here in committee today. The chair is applauding, and I will share with you. You're going to be so pleased because neither of these bills have any opposition. So let me share with you what the bill before you is about, Senate Bill 880, because this bill establishes a pilot program within the Maryland Department of Budget and Management that would direct the department to select 5 executive branch agencies of their choice to evaluate whether certain full-time positions could be converted into 2 part-time positions. The purpose of this pilot is very straightforward. It's to expand access to stable employment for Maryland residents who are able and willing to work, but cannot participate in traditional full-time schedules. Across the United States, millions of capable individuals remain partially excluded from the workforce because many government and private sector jobs are structured almost exclusively around full-time employment. Yet the data shows that a large share of the workforce relies on part-time work due to caregiving responsibilities, age-related needs, health conditions, or disabilities. In fact, more than 35.5 million Americans, over 1 in 5 workers, are employed part-time, which demonstrates that flexible work structures are already a major component of the modern labor market. This legislation recognizes that government can lead by example by exploring whether greater flexibility in job design can expand opportunity without reducing service quality. Women would be among the primary beneficiaries of expanding high-quality part-time opportunities. Women are significantly more likely than men to be working part-time because of caregiving responsibilities for their children, for aging parents, or family members with health conditions. Nationally, nearly 6 in 10 part-time workers are in fact women, and women are about 1.6 times more likely than men to work part-time. Many women who seek part-time employment do so because traditional work schedules do not accommodate family responsibilities. Expanding part-time roles in public service would allow Maryland to retain talented workers who might otherwise leave the workforce entirely during caregiving periods. Flexible and part-time employment also plays a critical role for older workers. As Americans live longer and remain active later in life, many seniors seek continued employment but prefer reduced hours. Data shows that more than 1 in 4 part-time workers are age 55 and older. Part-time roles allow older workers to remain engaged in the workforce while balancing health considerations, caregiving for spouses, or gradual transitions into retirement. Public sector pilot programs, such as the one proposed in this bill, could enable state government to retain valuable institutional knowledge while also creating mentoring opportunities for younger employees. Perhaps the most significant workforce benefit would be for individuals with disabilities. Many people with disabilities can and want to work, but they require flexible scheduling or reduced hours due to health limitations or medical treatments. Pardon me. By designing part-time positions with benefits and stable schedules, Maryland could significantly expand access to employment for residents with disabilities while also strengthening workforce inclusion within our state government. Importantly, this bill does not mandate widespread restructuring of the state workforce. Instead, it establishes a thoughtful pilot program allowing the Department of Budget and Management to analyze where converting full-time roles into 2 part-time roles could expand workforce participation, maintain or improve service delivery, increase workforce diversity and inclusion, and provide opportunities for residents who cannot work traditional full-time schedules. Maryland has long been a leader in creating inclusive and innovative workforce policies, and this bill continues that tradition. For these reasons, colleagues, I respectfully urge a favorable report on Senate Bill 880. I appreciate your consideration. I also want to extend my thanks to the good delegate, Sarah Wallach, who is the catalyst behind this legislation, and she has worked very closely with the Department of Budget and Management. And colleagues, I will call out the fact you do not see any opposition from the department with regard to this legislation. With that, thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. And Katrina, do you want to give us your testimony?
Thank you, Chair Beadle, members of the committee, and especially Senator Feldman for introducing this bill. My name is Katrina Emerson Kugel from SEEK, a community provider that supports over 300 individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Over 60% of the people we support who are interested in working have jobs, which is 3 times the national average and 15 points higher than the statewide rate. The people we support work part-time, on average 25 hours a week. They are excellent employees with 89% staying in their job for over a year, meaning their turnover rate is 1/3 the national rate for entry-level employees. And on average, they've been in their positions for 5 years. Part-time employment works for the people we support for several reasons. Often, people with disabilities have little experience with work. Starting part-time helps them to develop endurance for future jobs, gives them the opportunity to solidify their skills, and allows for continued learning and career development. As users of the public transportation system, their commute can add extra time, sometimes hours, to their workday. Part-time schedules allow time for wraparound services, which might include travel training, so they can get to work independently, and learning assistive technology, which can help them communicate and execute their jobs more effectively. We often work with employers to create customized employment, and part-time roles are often easier to personalize. For example, Sarah and Tati work part-time creating the floral arrangements and holiday decor at Zinnia Restaurant in Silver Spring. I recommend a visit to see their beautiful work in person. Part-time positions like these often lead to full-time employment and a reduced reliance on benefits as their confidence and skills grow. Competitive integrated employment is a critical part of belonging and contributing to one's community. This bill will help create more of these opportunities for people with disabilities. I urge a favorable report. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, just real fast, I'd be remiss if I did not thank Secretary Weissman, who's put a lot of time into helping work through the details and creating the framework for the bill.
Good. And we still have your panelist Monica Schaefer on virtually, so she's going to testify, and then we'll see if there's other questions. Thank you. Monica,
Yes.
you want to unmute and start?
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Beidel, Vice Chair Hayes, and esteemed members of the Finance Committee. My name is Monica Schaefer, and I'm honored to have the opportunity to testify in support of Senate Bill 880. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of the Montgomery County's Age-Friendly Initiative, of which I serve on the Employment Domains Work Group. As a research, health psychologist, and gerontologist, consulting now for the globally recognized Age-Friendly Institute, I'm keenly interested and involved in how individuals and organizations can thrive in the 21st century longevity economy. Passage of Senate Bill 880 could help to address labor shortages predicted over the next decade, even with automation and AI, by recruiting and retaining a talented, often overlooked and underutilized labor pipeline of older adults and others, including current state employees who are interested in phased retirement and or need flexibility accommodated by part-time positions. We are at a critical juncture. A significant economic engine for the state of Maryland is the 50-plus age group, currently representing 36% of our state's population, with the 65-plus in age group growing faster than any other segment of the population. Senate Bill 880 will support Governor Moore's Longevity Ready Maryland 10-year plan by helping to implement new employment pathways for workers of all ages who both need to and want to work for financial stability as well as for continued engagement and purpose. Senate Bill 880 will aid state government lead by example in making Maryland longevity ready. We support and urge favorable consideration because this legislation positions the state government to pilot a program that would help to address workforce inclusivity, foster economic growth for the state, and economic opportunity for older workers while supporting and enhancing the well-being of all workers. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any questions? I see Senator Giles Light.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Kramer, for this bill. I had spoken with Delegate Wolick about this bill some time ago, so I'm familiar with it. I really like the concept of it. I just thought I want to give you an opportunity to talk about the fiscal note a little bit, if you had taken a look at that.
Thank you for that. And you know what? It's difficult to explain fiscal notes at times. it indicates that there is just over a value of $100,000 that would be needed to implement this program. You have to question whether it really requires additional personnel to make this program happen. Shortly after COVID, the state, within a very short period of time, did a complete analysis of all jobs with regard to the ability of working from home. And what that would entail. I suspect that there's a lot of data and information that already exists, and I do realize that the committee would, need to send this to our friends over in Budget and Tax to get their approval. But I would say that the upside and the benefits to this kind of legislation to pull people into the workforce and to give them the opportunity to have incomes that they will then be paying taxes on could reap all kinds of rewards and benefits that don't necessarily exist right now, and that our economy would be the ultimate beneficiary of getting people into the workforce that otherwise might not be. And again, especially for those who are committed to helping family members, the caregivers that are anxious to be part of a workforce. And so I think for our overall economy, we would benefit dramatically from bringing folks into the workforce, and again, with a large focus on our friends and neighbors with disabilities that would certainly benefit from being, part of a workforce that they would like to be. So I think it is a very valuable, it's a small investment, it's a small fiscal note, but I think it's a very worthwhile investment, and I think those are the things we routinely weigh when we're looking at legislation, and this would be a very valuable one.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Senator, besides the small fiscal note, which I agree with you, I don't know why you need an extra person for that, 2 extra people. But there is some notes about, you'd need probably 2 laptops. You would need maybe health insurance for 2 people instead of 1. So while there's a lot of benefits, and I was very successful in my business having 2 people filling 1 position, there are some additional costs that would have to be considered. So thank you for that. Thank you for the bill. Senator Mounts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I understand and appreciate the intent of the bill. However, teleworking is an issue in the state workforce that is very interesting. It's also very controversial. There's been, I know I have relentless constituent cases, not being able to reach people, that sort of thing. And I was wondering, I'm just concerned with teleworking and all the problems that have been associated with teleworking, which I know this bill is not focused on, how either that would affect teleworking or how it would enhance it. I really don't know. Is there a limitation on what types of positions would be available for part-time work? Are they categorized? Is there any way to determine where these positions would be provided? I think the biggest concern about teleworking is if you look at the Department of Natural Resources in Tall's building, it's just, I think it's 4 or 5 stories and it's largely empty from what I'm told. And I know I've been to some of the other state agencies where you'll go onto a floor and there would be cubicles, as far as you can see one way, as far as you can see the other, and there'd be about a dozen people on the entire floor. And so how would these jobs be categorized, or how would they be identified?
So the bill provides that it is entirely within the discretion of the Department of Budget and Management to determine which agencies they would like to operate the pilot program, and then which positions they would like to try to incorporate into the program. And with a very important point being, this is where there are existing vacancies. It's not taking a current filled position and trying to divide it. It's within the particular agency. If they're looking to fill a vacant position, would this particular position make sense to try using 2 people to fill it? And it could be within a particular agency, there may be a total of 3 vacancies. And then the department might say, let's choose one of them and see if it would make sense to do it as 2 positions. But all that discretion will lie with the department as to how they want to fulfill the pilot program. And it really does not touch on teleworking. So that's not something that is incorporated into the proposed legislation.
Would you be, well, I would put this out to consider, but potentially maybe putting a provision in saying that in this pilot program, these positions shall not be eligible for teleworking. Something to consider. Would that be something you could consider?
Well, first of all, I think that would be unnecessary. But if somehow there might be, and again, I'm not in the position to best determine whether teleworking might be appropriate or not, but maybe the agency would look, maybe the secretary would look at it and say, maybe this is something that might make sense for it. I don't think we would want to tie their hands if that made sense. But I also don't think that this legislation really touches on that at all. But I think that's something for the people who know the positions best to look at.
Thank you.
Nope, thank you.
Senator, your other person has joined us virtually, and that's Santi Baggett. So Santi, would you like to unmute and give us your testimony, please?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Committee. My name is Santi Bhagat. I'm a physician in policy, founder of Physician Parent Caregivers, a Maryland nonprofit think tank with over 20 years of health policy advocacy, and the founder of Invisible Wave, a growing social movement for young invisibles, who are young adults aged 18 to 40 who grew up with childhood onset chronic conditions. This is not a small group. 1 in 3 young Americans grew up with childhood chronic conditions. Most importantly, I am the mother of a young adult who grew up with epilepsy, and I know firsthand what happens to these young people and their families. Maryland's elected leaders, sorry, I lost my notes. Wonderful. Okay. Elected leaders have long recognized this population for years. Senator Chris Van Hollen and Congressman Jamie Raskin introduced a joint congressional resolution calling on the nation to act. Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller, Speaker Jocelyn Pena-Melnick, Senators Mary Beth Carrozza and Brian Feldman, and Delegate Sarah Wallach have all championed further inclusion in healthcare, education, and the workforce in Maryland. That bipartisan, bicameral recognition is the foundation we must build on. I strongly support SB 880, and I want to tell you why it's personal. When my daughter became seriously ill at age 8, I stopped practicing medicine. My husband could no longer travel for his business. We came to the verge of bankruptcy, exactly what research tells us happens to families like ours. A former board member, a Georgetown-trained attorney, faced the same impossible choice and also left her career. When caregivers are forced out entirely, the losses go far beyond a paycheck. If I could have worked part-time with benefits, everything would have been different. Our family would not have been on the verge of bankruptcy for over 2 years. We would have had health coverage and contributed to Social Security. Most importantly, the 15 years of my education and training would have been put to good use. This would have helped my mental health and social connections. And I would have role modeled for my family how mothers can work and balance the family. And that is exactly what our young adults need too. My daughter is now in her 30s and still cannot commit to full-time work because of her chronic condition. We have ambassadors in our organization facing the same wall. One is a trained accountant on disability with skills our government could use. Another had to leave her job entirely and is now pursuing an executive MBA at Yale. These are not people who lack drive or talent. They lack an on-ramp. SB 880 builds that on-ramp for caregivers, for young adults with chronic conditions. For Maryland's economy, millennials and Gen Z are the two largest generations, and they already comprise over half of the workforce. Governor Moore.
Sandy, can you wrap up, please?
This
Your
bill
time's
can
up.
address that. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Seeing none, that ends the hearing on Senate Bill 880. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Kramer, if you'll stay there, you now have Senate Bill 753, Fiduciary Institutions, Exploitation of Seniors and Vulnerable Adults. You have Roy Murray, Robert Enton, Sarah Weistrach, Judith Bovoin, and Rachel Keys. So, Evan, I do not see Mr. Enton. Would you like to come and take his place?
Come on, buddy. I can tell you that he is going to be very saddened that we are hearing the bill without him. He's actually in the House. He's been texting me because he worked with me from Jump Street on this bill, and he was so excited to be coming to the table in a kumbaya moment.
So
But
Mr. Enton seems to be in the House more than in the Senate.
Uh-oh.
So, yeah, uh-oh's right.
Uh-oh.
But thank you, Senator. You can begin your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Vice Chair and members of the committee. Ben Kramer with Senate Bill 753. And again, just sharing with you all, there is a delightful bill before you that is impactful and has no opposition whatsoever. I appreciate the opportunity to present Senate Bill 753. This legislation is a common sense consumer protection measure designed to help prevent financial exploitation of seniors and vulnerable adults by empowering financial institutions to intervene when suspicious transactions occur. Financial exploitation is one of the fastest growing forms of elder abuse. Nationally, older Americans lose billions of dollars each year to fraud, scams, and financial abuse. These losses are rising as criminals increasingly target older adults who have spent decades building their savings. In 2024 alone, older Americans reported nearly $4.9 billion in fraud losses, and that is very likely a low end, as many of those who are in fact victims of scams do not report it. Financial institutions are very often the first line of defense against this exploitation. Frontline bank employees regularly see the warning signs: unusual withdrawals, sudden wire transfers, or a suspicious individual attempting to control a senior's finances. Yet without clear legal authority, banks may hesitate to intervene. Senate Bill 753 helps to address this gap. This bill authorizes fiduciary institutions, when they reasonably suspect financial exploitation, to delay or deny suspicious disbursements from an account belonging to a senior or a vulnerable adult, to notify appropriate parties, such as trusted contacts, adult protective services, or law enforcement, share relevant financial records with investigators, and operate with safe harbor protections from liability when acting in good faith to protect a customer. These protections are modeled on what are commonly known as transaction hold laws. And many states have adopted this similar legislation to help financial institutions stop fraud before the money disappears, and that's the operative part of this. Once that money is gone, it is exceedingly difficult to make the victim whole. According to the American Bankers Association, foundations State Hold Laws and Elder Financial Exploitation Prevention Survey, more than half of banks operating in states with hold laws have used them to stop suspected exploitation, and 43% report that these laws have been effective in preventing financial abuse. Additionally, nearly 90% of banks in states without such laws say that having one would be beneficial in protecting older customers. These laws give banks the brief window they need to verify whether a transaction is legitimate or whether a senior is being manipulated by a scammer, a caregiver, or, sadly, a family member. Importantly, again, colleagues, this bill is the result of collaboration with stakeholders who work on the front lines of protecting consumers. The Maryland Bankers Association has been delightful to work with in drafting this legislation. And colleagues, it is based exactly on state law we already have in place right now for securities in the state. So this is nothing new that we are doing. We have done it previously. I'm pleased to say that the Maryland Bankers Association joined me at the table probably a good 15 years ago, colleagues, when we passed legislation to make our banks mandatory reporters of suspected fraud and to train all of their employees who interact with the public to look for fraud. And this bill builds on the work that we have done previously. And with that, I thank you all very much.
Thank you, Senator. Who would like to go next?
I'll keep mine short. Rory Murray here on behalf of the Maryland DC Credit Union Association. I promise I'm not offended that credit unions were not mentioned in any of the opening comments, but we do a lot of this as well. As Senator Kramer says, common sense bill adds tools to the toolbox to help us prevent fraud. Fraud is very difficult to manage. It's often the largest charge-off category in financial institutions. So for those reasons, we support the bill. Hope for favorable passage.
Okay, thank you, Rory. Who's next?
Hello, Chair Beidel, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of Senate Bill 753. My name is Rachel Keys with the Cash Campaign of Maryland. Our organization works statewide to promote economic advancement to low to moderate income households through free tax preparation, financial education, and advocacy. Cash also staffs the Maryland Financial Education and Capability Commission, co-chaired by Delegate Stein and Senator Brooks. One of the commission's responsibilities is to monitor efforts that improve the financial safety and capability of Maryland residents. Senate Bill 753 does exactly that. Many of the older adults we serve rely almost entirely on fixed incomes like Social Security. When financial exploitation occurs, even a single fraudulent transaction can mean missed rent, utility shutoffs, or not being able to afford medication. This is not a rare problem. It is estimated that nearly 3/4 of these cases are never reported. When crimes go unreported, the same perpetrators often continue targeting others. Senate Bill 753 creates an important early intervention point. It allows financial institutions to pause suspicious transactions and alert protective authorities before the money disappears. For these reasons, we respectfully urge a favorable report.
Good afternoon, Chair Beidel, Vice Chair Hayes, and members of the committee. My name is Sarah Westrick. I'm the Advocacy Director for AARP Maryland, here representing our 850,000 members age 50 and older. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in strong support of Senate Bill 753, the Vulnerable Adult Banking Protection Act, and we thank Senator Kramer for his leadership on this legislation. In a few moments, you'll hear from a brave AARP fraud network survivor who is joining us today. Her willingness to share this deeply personal experience is an act of courage. And her voice is exactly why this legislation matters. She is turning harm into advocacy, and we are grateful.
Senate Bill 753 addresses one of the fastest growing and most devastating forms of elder abuse, that is financial exploitation. Once money leaves an account, it is almost never recovered. The only effective intervention is stopping suspicious transactions before funds disappear, often overseas and often within minutes. This bill gives financial institutions a proven, balanced tool that's already in use in 26 other states: the ability to temporarily delay or deny a suspicious disbursement when exploitation is reasonably suspected. The hold is short, with limited extension only when Adult Protective Services, law enforcement, a state's attorney, or a court requests it. Funds are released immediately if the institution determines no exploitation has occurred. This approach works. It stops theft at the point of transaction, clarifies expectations for financial institutions, protects consumer privacy, and it increases public trust. Senate Bill 753 gives Maryland banks and credit unions the tools they need to shield older adults and vulnerable consumers without restricting legitimate transactions. For all of these reasons, AARP respectfully urges a favorable report.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Judith Boivin, a Montgomery County resident and AARP Fraud Network volunteer. I'm here today because I was the victim of a devastating scam. In September of 23, I received a call that appeared to come from the Rockville Police Department. The caller claimed I was under investigation for fraud and money laundering, and then transferred me to an FBI cybersecurity director who knew personal details about my life and convinced me that criminals were using my social security number to traffic fentanyl. He told me I needed to cooperate in a covert operation to prove my innocence. He called morning and night, insisted on secrecy, and pressured me to liquidate all my financial accounts. Over several weeks, I withdrew my IRAs and savings. Nearly $600,000 was stolen from me. This was our retirement livelihood. When the calls stopped in December, the criminals were gone. An authentic FBI agent later confirmed I'd been speaking with an imposter. My case remains under investigation. The financial loss has been catastrophic, especially as my husband has Parkinson's, and we now face tax penalties from those forced withdrawals. SB 753 is essential because it empowers financial institutions to step in when they see red flags. Had these protections existed in 23, the banks might have questioned the withdrawals or even prevented them. These safeguards can prevent tragedy. I respectfully urge a favorable report of SB 753. Thank you for your time and your commitment to protecting vulnerable adults.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Evan Richards, Head of Government Community Relations for the Maryland Bankers Association. Madam Chair, I greatly appreciate your flexibility allowing me to testify today. Senator Kramer, I just want to say thank you for your partnership along this way. Not only Mr. Etten, but myself, the American Bankers Association, and four member banks, really stepped up to try to make this happen this year. So again, really appreciate all your efforts. And I know the committee appreciates brevity. So on behalf of the 29 Maryland headquartered banks and the 75 banks that operate within the state, strong me too. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. Do you have any questions? Senator Lamb?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank the sponsor for bringing this forward, and I think it is important, particularly with our aging population and what we're seeing. I think, it really brought to light in my district, there was a concern where in one of the HOAs in my district, and I found out about this, but they still own property in that HOA, that there was the president of the HOA was essentially kind of swindled and made to misbelieve that they needed to remove funding out of the HOA's account. And it was only because a neighbor kind of caught wind of they were going to the bank, they were getting out a cashier's check. The neighbor went along with that HOA president to the bank, and the bank was able to kind of flag that as well because they thought this was a little bit odd. And working with that neighbor who notified the rest of the HOA's board, it was an incomplete board, and that's why this was part of the problem. There was no treasurer, and so the president was functioning also as a treasurer. By the time they caught this and the bank was able to pause that transaction from going forward, police were called in, all of this, $40,000 of this HOA's funds were taken out in cashier's check and sent to wherever and irretrievable at this point. So, being able to give more tools to our financial institutions to be able to pick up on instances like this. And this was an older individual who was that HOA president, I think is really important and really, again, brings home the fact why tools like this are really important for our financial institutions to be able to intervene. So with that, I think I say, Mr. Enton, do you have anything you want to say?
I apologize.
No? Okay.
You're not the chair. Mr. Enton, I asked Evan to testify for you, and he did since you were too busy in the House.
That's fine.
Do we have any other questions for this panel? I don't see any. Thank you for this good bill, Senator. That ends the hearing on Senate Bill 753.
Good job, Bob.
Oh.
Just in time.
Okay, we now have Senator Watson, I think. Is he here? Yes, he is. Senator Watson is going to bring us Senate Bill 759. You have a panel, Howard Jean, Ye Undapeo, and Katie Ann Searcy. This is financial institutions, digital assets, and digital asset staking regulation. Thank you, Senator.
Good afternoon, Chair Botto, Vice Chair Hayes, members of the committee. I'm Senator Ron Watson from the 23rd Legislative District and a proud sponsor of Senate Bill 759, the Maryland Financial Innovation Act of 2026. This bill simply updates Maryland law by providing basic definitions for blockchain technology and clarifying that staking is a service. And because we know how important definitions are, let me tell you what staking is. Staking is the process of committing cryptocurrency to help operate and secure a blockchain network, usually in exchange for rewards. A simple example is to think of staking like putting up a deposit to help run the system. By staking your crypto, you help the network verify transactions and maintain the blockchain, and in return, you earn rewards, usually in the form of crypto. The key point is that staking is not lending your crypto. Instead, you are committing it to the blockchain security and validation system. With nearly 15% of Marylanders now owning some form of digital asset, it's essential that we pass this bill that clarifies the legal status of staking and ensures Maryland law reflects how these services actually work. Just as importantly, this bill does not weaken fraud prevention or consumer protection. If a company engages in those activities, the state will retain full authority to enforce its laws. The issue today is that staking services are being treated like securities, even though they're not. When something is not a security, there's simply nothing to register. Misapplying securities law in this context risks chilling innovation far beyond crypto. Maryland is also increasingly an outlier. 46 other states already allow staking services to operate. At the federal level, the SEC has provided federal guidance that confirms these services are not securities. So at its core, this legislation really is about clarity. Because Maryland lacks that clarity today, Maryland residents have already missed out on about $9 million in staking rewards on various platforms, rewards that instead went to residents in other states. This bill closes that gap. It confirms that staking as a service is not a security, aligns Maryland with the vast majority of states, preserves consumer ownership and transparency, and helps keep Maryland competitive in the growing digital economy. And again, to be clear, this bill does not deregulate crypto, eliminate fraud enforcement, or weaken consumer protection laws. It simply provides the clarity needed so Marylanders are not left behind as this technology develops. I ask for your favorable report of Senate Bill 759. Madam Chair, I'd like to turn it over to my panel.
Thank you, Senator. Who'd like to go next?
Myself. Good afternoon, Chairwoman and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Katie Ann, and I lead policy in Maryland at Coinbase, the country's largest crypto platform. At Coinbase, we don't just accept regulation, we advocate for it. We hold 46 state money transmission licenses, including one right here from the Maryland Office of Financial Regulation. We are regulated by the CFTC and the SEC through various subsidiaries and by dozens of regulators around the world. We believe the crypto economy needs clear rules of the road to protect consumers and foster innovation. More than 52 million Americans own crypto, including 15% of Marylanders. This is not a fringe technology. Maryland should be looking for ways to participate in this innovation, not putting itself at a disadvantage. Staking, which this bill addresses, allows individuals to temporarily lock up their digital assets to verify transactions and secure the network, earning rewards from the blockchain protocol. Importantly, users always retain ownership and control of their assets. This bill simply clarifies the legal status of staking. The services are not securities. Maryland is currently an outlier. 46 states already permit staking services. This committee cares rightfully about consumer harm. In more than 6 years offering staking nationwide, no Coinbase employee has ever lost assets through our staking services. This bill preserves the full authority of the Office of Financial Regulation and the Attorney General to protect consumers and prosecute bad actors. Because Maryland lacks this clarity today, Maryland residents have already missed out on more than $9 million in staking rewards. That's $9 million that is not in the pockets of Marylanders today. This bill confirms staking as a service ensures Marylanders are not left behind and shows that the state of Maryland is open for innovation. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Good afternoon. My name is Howard Jean, and I currently reside in Prince George County, Oxon Hill to be exact. My name is based in Black Meta Agency. We're a virtual reality workforce development training firm that I built from the ground up as a solo founder with no loans or outside investment. We have one goal: to leverage the blockchain to help everyday people access opportunity in the digital economy. I understand this ecosystem from the very core. I'm a builder, a developer, and a stakeholder. When I think about scaling my company here in Maryland, I reflect on the work across the state that our company leads in Web3 and emerging tech. In Montgomery County, in Rockville, at University of Shady Grove, I serve as a co-chair of the Engineering Technology Hub and Board of Advisors, and also at the Community College of Baltimore County, Dundalk campus, we launched the nation's first VR dental hygiene program. And lastly, we're currently touring with Stand With Crypto to teach students about the blockchain and careers in the blockchain. So the work that we do exists across the entire state, and it centers on the blockchain as a resource and opportunity for our students. I want to continue to grow my company here, hire talent, and invest in the community that shaped me and my business. But due to certain current policies, there are certain business models and opportunities that we are unable to participate in. I'm currently working in DC with their insurance, securities, and banking organization, and they have $500 million for fintech companies to relocate there. A lot of companies are moving across the border, and we're losing a lot of great opportunities here in Maryland. We have the talent and entrepreneurial spirit to compete, but we need the policy environment to make it happen. The staking ban doesn't just restrict a product, it stifles creativity, it limits growth, and it shrinks the broader economic impact that comes from builders using these tools and jobs. We talk about free markets and free enterprise, but when it comes to how I can use and grow my own digital assets, there's suddenly a glass ceiling placed above me. People who couldn't afford a home now can invest in fractional real estate. Cities can generate new forms of revenue in a challenged economy by leveraging the blockchain. My message is simple. Give us the space and freedom to innovate and the chance to compete, to continue the culture of progress that makes Maryland so unique.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Yonda Pooh, Baltimore County, and I am a proud Marylander. I am the founder and CEO of Genius Room, a global home for leaders, governments, and entrepreneurs leading in AI, Web3, blockchain, and ethical innovation. I am also a 2026 delegate for Women of Color in Blockchain, selected by Cleve Messenger to serve on our council. As a Black woman in blockchain, I know both the promise of this technology and the populations that risk being left behind if we don't act. When I look at Maryland, I see underused and underserved communities filled with untapped potential. For years, I've worked close to markets to understand how value is created, but also how access to that value is controlled. Opportunity isn't evenly distributed, particularly isn't accessible. Blockchain gives us the tools to break what I call generational monetary curses by creating access, transparency, and new ways for all to participate in the financial system. Staking at its core is a reward system. If I allow my digital assets to help secure a network, I should be able to earn rewards in return. Platforms like Coinbase offer between 3.5 and 5% of staking rewards in states where it's permitted. That's not speculation. That's the equivalent to building a savings account for my future and my children's future. When my own family members in other states can access these opportunities, I cannot. It feels like Marylanders are being intentionally left behind, forced to play catch up while others accelerate in progress. Business, talent, and innovation will move, and I would hate to see our population decrease because we fail to embrace digital transformation. Through initiatives like Genius Room, I work to connect high net worth individuals, governments, founders, and communities because this is about partnership, collaboration, and forward-looking policy. 3, 5, 10 years from now, the future will be digital. My only request is this: do not leave underserved, underrepresented, and undervalued populations behind. Maryland needs access to crypto and staking, not as a luxury, but as a bridge to a more inclusive financial system. The time is now. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Guile?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Ms. Is it Searcy? Is that Searcy?
Yes.
Okay. So what other states have passed this?
And so, ironically, the majority of states did not need to pass a law. They've allowed staking regardless. So 46 states currently allow it. Last year, it passed the Kentucky state legislature, and Democratic Governor Andy Beshear signed it into law. That's the most recent. Wisconsin, we're seeing this same law being passed. It passed the Assembly last week and is in the Senate this week. So we're hoping it goes to the governor's desk next week.
Okay. And what about like neighboring states, Virginia or Pennsylvania?
Virginia, Pennsylvania, Delaware, DC, they all allow staking. On Coinbase's platform alone, they have made nearly $70 million on staking rewards.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Reedy?
Yeah, so one of my questions was, I thought a lot of the states around us have it. So
yes,
there's some opposition here in the bill file, and I think we're going to hear from some folks that are concerned about making sure people aren't taken advantage of, which I know we all agree with. What are there some things you guys have seen where consumers have had an issue where staking has hurt them, or where there was something not clear that caused the consumers to have a problem, and how have you guys dealt with that as a company?
So as a company on Coinbase's platform, we've offered staking as a service for 6 years, and we have actually never had a consumer lose money by staking as a service. And so to give you, we obviously are not the only crypto company in the United States. So to give you context on the global ecosystem, this is a silly statistic, but it'll give you like an understanding. You're 6 times more likely to be struck by lightning than to lose money through staking as a service. This is a very safe, consumer forward type of crypto. That's why this bill is so narrow.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. It's the Attorney General is telling us that they're claiming, and I guess we'll hear if they come up. Maybe I'll ask Mr. Brower as soon as he's going to be up. But they're saying it's not illegal. Well, I'll get into it with him. I was interested. But basically, you're telling me there's not really a long history of consumers being taken advantage of.
Yes, sir.
To answer my question. Okay.
And to be clear, as a person right now, you can stake in Maryland. You just have to do it yourself. And it's complex and difficult and takes a lot of time. It's time consuming. So what is illegal right now in Maryland, or what's not available, is staking as a service. Coinbase provides that platform. You can think of it like an Airbnb. You own a rental property and want to own it. You can go and put a sign in the window that says for rent. You can meet the tenants, change them out, deal with the credit card processing, or you can hire Airbnb. They manage all of that. They manage the credit card processing and check out, verify the tenant. And so Coinbase is the Airbnb in this situation with staking.
Oh, that's okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Senator Mounts?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question. You said 70 million? When that
Yes, sir.
Senator asked you, we were asking about other states. Is that $70 million in business or $70 million in tax revenue?
$70 million in rewards that consumers have received. So this is money directly to consumers and people who stake. So that $70 million, apologies, I do not know your tax code, but would be taxable revenue.
Okay. I just want to get a better understanding of the number we're throwing around.
It's substantial.
Okay. Thank you.
It would be helpful for the other bills heard here.
Thank you.
Katie Ann, are there issues with Securities and Exchange? Do they oversee this at all? If you put your accounts onto a staking platform, would the Securities and Exchange still be protecting your investments?
So we're regulated by the SEC on the federal level.
And what does that mean that you're regulated?
So for this particular, because it's not a security, this would be more regulated under the Office of Financial Regulation. So if there are bad actors in the place, the Attorney General still has authority to go after those bad actors, but staking is not registered as a security because it's not a security. So I believe, to answer your question, it doesn't necessarily fall under the SEC guidelines in Maryland.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm trying, Ms. Searcy, to understand a little bit of follow-up on what the chair's question was just now. You said you can have staking in Maryland, but you can't offer it as the service that you provide, Coinbase. Why not? Why can't you provide that? Is there a law that prohibits you from having your service?
So we are in a lawsuit right now, so that's why we can't provide it with the Attorney General's office.
Wait a minute. Now I'm even more confused. There's a lawsuit with the Attorney General, and that's what's prohibiting you from being able to provide this service? Or were you providing the service and maybe the AG's office is questioning whether you should have? What would it take for you to be able to provide your service?
We were providing the service until June of 2023.
Okay.
And then the Attorney General's office sent a cease and desist, and we were no longer able to provide Marylanders staking service.
And what was their logic? What's the rationale that they said you can't do this?
The Attorney General's office says that staking as a service is a security, which is different from 46 other states and the federal government's SEC guidelines.
So if the Attorney General's office said you're a security, why does that prevent you from providing your service? Can't you just, I don't know, what, do you have to pay a fee or something? I don't understand. Is it just, if they say it's okay, you're a security now. That's what they've said. Why don't you do your business as a security?
We can't register as a security because staking is not a security. It's as simple as also, you can't register a potato as a security. It doesn't fit the guidelines in order to register it.
But it sounds like the Attorney General's office has said, yes, you are a security, and therefore you could register as a security. Is that, or am I mistaken?
That is what the Attorney General's office is saying. You'll have to ask them. But 46 other states and the federal government disagree.
Okay, so the issue, that's what I'm trying to get to here. So the issue is not that we're in a position where The Attorney General's office has said you are a potato and you will be registered as a potato, but it's your assertion you're not a potato. But if you were registered as a potato, you'd be doing business here, correct?
Yes, sir, but we can't, as a potato, we can't register as a security.
Why can't you? What's preventing you? In other words, did the securities commissioner say, sorry, you can't register with us? Or did they say, yeah, you can register with us? That's what I'm trying to,
Right.
and
No,
maybe we'll get answers to that.
It's a valid question.
Yeah.
But, if staking is a security, and then why can't everything be a security just based on whatever one attorney general says? We're looking at 46 other states that allow us to offer staking services along with the federal government. And to be clear, these 46 other states, they aren't, New York, like these AGs are not just, these are some of the brightest minds in law, right? Like these are not, sorry, Senator, these are all
No,
different.
I understand. I'm just trying to, we've been able, I think just in this conversation, I've been able to winnow down more directly why we're having this bill and this conversation. I just wasn't quite getting there. I think, and I guess we need to hear from the folks who are going to come up, because it sounds like you could be doing exactly what you want to do, but under Maryland law, you would just be listed as a security, but it sounds like you don't want to do that. You're kind of staking your ground and saying, well, if we somehow acknowledge in Maryland we're a security, that could expose us to being a security elsewhere. And is it that you're concerned about being regulated by them and having oversight? I'm trying to, again, understand.
No, it's not about oversight, because the Attorney General and OFR continue to have oversight, regardless of if we are registered as a security. And I think that's really important. In order to be a security, the consumer no longer has control of the asset. So that means like when you have a stock and you put it on the market, that stock goes into the market and it is sent, and it's played in the market. When you stake on the blockchain, as the consumer, you hold it the entire time. Staking does not meet the criteria to be a security. And that is what, we can't just, this is like the potato argument. You can't just register something as a security when it's not a security. So that's like the crux of our position here.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the conversation. So thank you.
I did too. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I don't see any other questions for this panel. Thank you very much. We have Rory Murray coming up with favorable with amendment. Rory, you changed sides on me. I was looking for you over there.
All over the place. Still Rory Murray, the credit unions. Favorable with amendment because in general support of the bill, but have oversight concerns is not an option on the website. So credit unions, I think like most financial institutions, are seeing the way that currency is moving, and we will adjust as necessary. However, specific to this bill, I'll preface by saying I don't care what legal term is used to describe these products. Call it an investment, call it a security, call it a non-investment security. It doesn't matter to me. What I know as a person who represents credit unions is this is somebody's money going to some other company with the hopes that they get more money back. And if it does not go well, and we do not know who is the regulator and who has oversight, when that person comes to their credit union and says, I've lost money, and I'm not saying it's any of these specific companies, but it's going to happen. We just had another bill on fraud, how to help with fraud, because even in typical financial institutions where the National Banking Act is over 200 years old and the Credit Union Act is 91 years old, we still have fraud. And those are extremely mature regulatory institutions. So when we're trying to build a new regulatory framework for digital currency, it's going to take a lot of time to get its feet under it. And I don't feel comfortable, credit unions don't feel comfortable with a bill that says pretty clearly this cannot be regulated by the state. Now, they're not being untruthful. There is still some regulatory authority. Under OFR, it's the Money Transmitter Act. It's very narrow and doesn't have great teeth. I guess the AG's office, they'd be better to talk about it, but they can still go after UDAP violations, but that's only if somebody goes to the AG's office. If there's no primary regulator, there's nobody doing consistent oversight. So don't dislike the bill on the merits of the bill, but think that there's got to be some sort of oversight there. If not, fraud is going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Rory? I don't see any. Thank you very much. We now have 3 unfavorables. Jennifer Bevan Dangle, Melanie Lupin from OAG Securities Division, and Max Brower, Maryland Office of the Attorney General, Securities, well, they're both the same, Securities Division. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Bevan Dangle. I'm the Deputy Director of Economic Action Maryland Fund. We are very much aligned with the witness you just heard. We've seen that there are a sort of suite of amendments to the bill. We appreciate the work that's been done to mitigate some of our initial concerns on reading the language. But our primary concern really remains around this lack of oversight, and it's the issue that Senator Kramer started to dive into. Let's be clear, we appreciate that Coinbase has run a rigorous system and that they haven't had fraud on their system. But there have been cases of significant fraud and abuse that have happened that have cost this dream you heard, which we are excited for the potential there as well, but it has cost these investors millions. Stake.com collapsed and cost $41 million to its consumers and investors. And Celsius, when it collapsed, you saw billions of user dollars tied up in the system, and they could not access them and they could not get them back. That's an important point, because whether this is a potato or not really rests on whether these are investors who have their money tied up or not. And our concern, and the concern with this lack of oversight, is that when the investment is put into that staking node, it is in fact tied up. That's why those billions of dollars of user investor money could not be accessed when Celsius collapsed. If they cannot access it, this is an investment. It is tied up and being held elsewhere. Under Maryland law, if we don't have some clear chain of oversight, and securities does happen to be the clearest chain of oversight, and you'll hear more about that from the division. If we do not have oversight to treat this as an investment, then there is no oversight. And so that is our concern. We're not against this legislation, but we feel very strongly that it cannot advance unless somehow this is legally rectified within the bill to make sure that these investors, that these startups that you have heard about that we think are incredible opportunities, they have to be protected. So we urge that whatever this committee does, there is a clear OAG oversight in the staking system.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and committee members. My name is Melanie Lubin, and I'm the Securities Commissioner in the Office of the Attorney General's Securities Division. Together with me is Max Brower, an Assistant Attorney General and Chief of our Enforcement Unit. We are here to urge the committee to vote no on SB 759. Industry has made a lot of noise objecting to what in reality are minimal requirements that they are subject to under the Maryland Securities Act. When it comes to staking as a service being sold as an investment contract, industry is objecting to registering those products with our office, and even more offensively, refusing to provide disclosure to Maryland investors to allow them to make informed investment decisions about what to do with their hard-earned investment dollars. Even more importantly, this bill goes way beyond addressing the industry's recalcitrance regarding the staking issue and eliminates the authority of the Maryland Securities Division to bring enforcement actions to protect Maryland investors from fraud involving digital assets. Industry would have you believe that the Office of Financial Regulation and the AG's Consumer Protection Division have sufficient authority over these activities. Those agencies do not. The consumer protection statutes do not apply to investment activities. OFR has authority over money transmitters, which covers only a very minor part of what is involved here, and does not have the authority to provide investor protection with regard to the products. Were this bill amended in a way to give OFR authority over the investor protection aspect of the digital asset transactions, we might not be here objecting to this bill. But OFR's jurisdiction over only the movement of these products from one place to another is not enough. The only state agency with anti-fraud authority is the Securities Division, and this bill would take away that authority. Consequently and critically, if this bill becomes law, there will be no place for Marylanders to turn when there are problems with or scams related to digital assets or cryptocurrency. The other reason to vote against this bill is that there is pending federal legislation to address the regulatory treatment of digital assets. The language of that legislation is still being discussed, but it's clear that there's serious work being done to preserve state anti-fraud and investor protection authority, which is being led by Senator Alsobrooks. Until the dust settles on that legislation, it's premature for Maryland to adopt legislation that will take away rights that we have and rights that exist in every other state in the country.
Thank you. Max?
I like potatoes, and blockchain technology holds great promise, but let's set the record straight here. Staking services are allowed in Maryland, and Maryland law doesn't do anything different from its neighbors. Staking enterprises are no more prohibited than an electric vehicle, but you have to have your EV registered and you have to have a driver's license. And if you offer staking services as an investment contract, you need to register that too. This bill is about a staking enterprise that refuses to register. Maryland, along with the SEC and about a dozen other states, filed enforcement actions for registration violations. The courts have agreed with the SEC's allegations. The current federal administration changed course, and now this bill is here to interfere with the division's pending enforcement action. Not because the emerging technology is unique, not because the law is unclear, not because the law is outdated, but just because they don't want to register. Just because you use blockchain doesn't mean that you don't have to follow the same law as everyone else. These cases are important. In 2022, the division settled with BlockFi, another digital asset firm. And later, due to volatility in the market, BlockFi went bankrupt. Thanks to the division's actions, Marylanders were protected, and the general fund received about $500,000, a little over $500,000. Now, if this committee wants to interfere with pending enforcement actions, we can debate the proper regulator for staking services. Amendments have not been discussed with us, but they should establish that staking services have robust safeguards, just as previous persons have testified, and the Securities Division needs to retain its anti-fraud authority. Finally, I do want to note that Section 1302 of this bill would eviscerate laws not related to staking. Even limiting this section just to local governments would threaten at least local consumer protection acts and local law enforcement. So while blockchain has promise, it still needs responsible regulation that protects our citizens. And I ask for an unfavorable report. Thank you.
Thank you for that explanation. Senator Reedy?
Curious if I could follow. But Jennifer, you mentioned stake.com, and I think you mentioned Celsius as well, but I was checking into that. Stake.com was an online crypto casino. So, and Celsius was, and I didn't know what Celsius was, but it was a crypto lending platform. This is not a lending platform or a casino. I mean, we're all concerned about oversight. I think you understood the point about want to be sure it's oversight, but it's kind of an apples, not quite an apples, but we're doing a lot of fruit and vegetables today. I think it's a little more of an apples to oranges comparison. But I mean, if we could find a way to be sure it's clear who the oversight is, you guys, that's your main concern with your organization, correct?
Absolutely, Senator. And apologies if there was a bit of an apples to potatoes there, but this landscape is so rapidly evolving, and we know that actually Budget and Tax has passed a bill to sort of study some of these pieces. There's a lot of different licensing and permitting entities. We just want to make sure that if and as this bill moves forward, there is a clear ability to regulate the staking itself. And you've heard a lot about how the bill is structured right now. It's just that money transmission.
But let me, and this may be more of a question for Max, but as has been pointed out by Max's testimony, the Attorney General's office, people can already stake now. It's just this allows them to have somebody help them do it. It's not. I guess it's different to me than saying we're opening something up for people to do that they're not already doing.
And the example was given of Airbnb, and we appreciate that because Airbnb is incredibly heavily regulated. It's regulated in some ways by the state. It's regulated in some ways differently in different local jurisdictions across Maryland. And yes,
yeah, but it's regulated because other people are going and staying at a place. It's not regulated because you are putting your money somewhere. I mean,
and forgive me because this is. I have never staked, so I cannot speak to this from personal experience, although I have stayed in many an Airbnb.
I like stake itself, but I don't know what, yeah, right.
But you are, in fact, tying up your money in these nodes, and if the node crashes, if there is a massive outage, like that money is in fact tied up. So it is the online equivalent of putting your money into a bank, and then in 1929 the banks collapsed. So this is in that way an investment, and that's why I think it's so tricky. If this committee wants to put the work into making sure that the definitions are adjusted so that there's clear OAG oversight, that's just what we're asking, that this money is in fact tied up in the node, and that needs to be covered.
Okay, and then just one more question, Madam Chair. If I could ask Max, I mean, your testimony is great. I'm reading through it. It's very dense, so I'm reading it. I'll probably have to read it 4 or 5 times, and then I'll completely understand it. What are other states doing on this issue that you think would be a good model? Or, I mean, you guys may just be against the bill, but we need to facilitate this in some way because this is where things are going. So are there other states that you would look at as a model for how to deal with some of the problems you're raising, or what's going on? Because we don't seem to see widespread problems with staking in all these other states. So I don't know if you have a comment on that. Or
Well, I'm just the enforcement chief. So in terms of the legislation in other states and any other regulatory regimes in other states, I think the commissioner might be better. I can give you a steak and potatoes answer on enforcement that's pretty meaty, if you'd like, but I might defer the regulatory regimes to my commissioner.
Are there some other states we could draw from to be sure we have some oversight, but not like just kill the bill? You know what I mean?
So that's really precisely the issue that's in front of the Congress, the U.S. Congress right now. And the Senate Ag Committee and the Senate Banking Committee are working out language for market structure to really figure out how to regulate these things. So what would be prudent, in my opinion, is for the committee and the legislature to wait until we see where the dust settles federally, and then we can figure out what to do. Because right now with the federal legislation, they're trying to figure out how do we keep jurisdiction within the states to be able to fight all the fraud that is either related to or tangentially related to digital assets, to make sure there still is a cop on the beat to protect people and figure out the best way to regulate these things. It could be that they end up with a status federally where we just require investor disclosure and we don't require registration. But it's premature to say do it this way or do it that way, because pretty much it's really misleading to say 46 states allow it. 46 states haven't taken enforcement action to block it. It doesn't necessarily mean they're allowed, because they are securities. The Southern District of New York has said in the case that we were in with the SEC, these are securities. It's in limbo now, and a good outcome would be to just wait and see what happens and then legislate, and we can regulate appropriately once we see how these things end up with, what kind of status these things end up with federally. The Securities Act says right in its language, coordinate with federal law. We're still waiting for the federal law to be clarified.
I think we may have just had a potato moment when it comes to it's not legal, they just haven't disallowed it. It's kind of, but I understand. I mean, I wish we could count on Congress to act quickly on something, but there's a whole lot of issues before Congress, and it's been this way for many years where it's hard. And, anyway, okay, thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
If I could add one thing, this was very close to being resolved in January, and Coinbase pulled its support of the federal bill because they didn't like the provisions, particularly because of this ability to pay or not pay what they're calling rewards, which are equivalent to interest on a bank account without the regulation that goes on with a bank.
Senator Kyle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any potato jokes for you, but I'm curious for the folks from the OAG. Have, I guess, neighboring states, Office of the Attorney General, have they taken the same consistent position that you all have?
I could speak to the enforcement part. And look, I can't confirm or deny investigations from other states. I can only talk about what's public. And I can give you the shortest answer I can on that, and that is that originally the Securities and Exchange Commission, about a dozen other states, the states that filed were not immediately bordering states to Maryland out of that dozen group, filed a case for investment contract registration violations. When the current administration decided to drop the case federally, some states decided to drop their actions without prejudice, and for any non-lawyers in the room, that just means that the action goes away for now. It doesn't mean it can never be brought again. They're just pausing. No states, conceded and said, we've changed our mind. This isn't a security. The actions that were coordinated were what we call multi-state actions. Oftentimes, state securities regulators coordinate multi-state actions where some securities regulators decide to be the ones that go out there and bring the enforcement actions because all 50 states plus the District of Columbia don't always have the resources to all be litigating all at the same time in their respective jurisdictions. So for this particular one, about a dozen went out there. When the SEC backed out, some states made their own independent considerations and said, look, we're not able to do this right now. Maryland, California, Washington, Wisconsin, New Jersey stayed in, and then Oregon just so happened to come out and decide, well, now that the SEC's out, we want to file and be in now too. So that's who's still in right now.
Okay.
And that's the state of play of enforcement. So to say that Virginia does something different, these neighboring jurisdictions here to Maryland is part of, we have the Uniform Securities Act here. We all have investment contract law, and it's the same law based off precedent arising out of the Great Depression everywhere. So to simply say that other states allow it isn't really not accurate.
Okay, but if this bill passes, you could pursue other actions like for fraud or unfair practices, or can you do that?
No, not for the Securities Division. The text presently written would not allow the Securities Division to pursue any actions related to staking services because the current text carves staking services out of the definition of an investment contract.
Okay.
So not only would we lose registration, we'd lose anti-fraud too.
And the other laws that everybody's citing, for the Commissioner of Financial Regulation and for consumer protection, do not cover the behaviors we're talking about. OFR has jurisdiction over the money transmitter, so if it goes from Coinbase to a bank, it goes from Coinbase to somebody else, they're acting as a money transmitter in that context. It doesn't cover the context that we're most concerned about, is that investors understand what they're getting into and that there's some oversight to the entities they're getting involved with. That goes away completely under this proposal.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Mounts?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just trying to digest and get up to speed. This is a complicated issue unless you have firsthand experience. But the panel prior, and I missed some of the testimony, I apologize, but the prior panel, Coinbase testified about, the Airbnb example, and they had no experiences of any of their clients being defrauded or losing out. Is that not the case?
I would disagree that it's like Airbnb. Similar argument was made in the Southern District of New York and in the District of Columbia in a related program. It was Binance's program. Coinbase's program was the Southern District of New York. The courts disagreed that it was like Airbnb. It was more like a 80-year-old Supreme Court precedent, SEC versus Howey, case you read about in your basic corporations class in law school or intro securities class.
I got in a lot of trouble in that class.
Well, then if you remember, if you happen to remember Howey, basically Howey sold land contracts to people, said you could farm the land if you want or we'll farm it for you. They pooled all the land together, farmed the oranges on the land and then divided the profits, took their cut and then gave, some returns to people. And the Supreme Court said, that's an investment contract.
And that goes to the second part of my question, the Airbnb analogy, okay, there's a different type of analogy, but the end statement is that the clients had not lost out. Is there an assertion that Coinbase is getting over on its clients, or there's something nefarious going on with the services they're providing?
I could take it too. Okay. From the enforcement perspective, we did not bring an anti-fraud action against Coinbase. It's about registration here. I did hear, the statistic about being struck by lightning. And look, lightning itself does carry risk. You don't go swimming or stand under tall trees in thunderstorms. And the whole point of registration is that we have a system here that allows disclosure for consumers, for investors to go out and make intelligent decisions and say, look, this staking program here looks really safe. I see their disclosures. I see their registration. This other program over here, I see their registration. I see their disclosures. It doesn't look as safe to me. But there is risk involved.
Wouldn't it be much more dangerous for someone with less expertise to go out and try to do this on their own?
The issue that comes up here is when somebody else gets involved and pulls it and takes on the responsibility of providing this for someone instead of somebody individually, like my kid and his friends being smart enough to figure out how to do this because they're all rocket scientists. But the literal rocket scientists. The problem here is someone else is taking responsibility. So if you had a bank that was paying interest on accounts, that bank is regulated, that credit union is regulated, that state bank is regulated. Here, the rewards are the equivalent of paying interest on a depository account, but there will be no regulator. There's no regulator that deals with it, that has oversight of it, who can make sure that, about the safety and soundness of the institution, can things be paid? And we're asking a very minimal thing. File a registration, costs less than $1,500. Give investors disclosure so they know what they're getting into. Is it better to put my money into staking than it is to put it in a bank and collect interest on a bank account or a certificate of deposit? We just want the information out there that people need in order to make an informed investment decision.
So that means you're favorable with an amendment?
There are some amendments that might help some of this. Our big concern is retaining our anti-fraud authority in the space, because this bill could be read to get rid of it completely.
In 12-1304, the last page, doesn't that do that? It says, subtitle may not be interpreted to abrogate or restrict the authority of the commissioner to regulate assets under the Maryland Money Transmissions Act, or number 2, the Division of Consumer Protection of the Office of the Attorney General to enforce the Maryland Consumer Protection Act.
So that doesn't take care of it, because that commissioner isn't me. That commissioner is the Commissioner of Financial Regulation. So that retains the authority that that office has over money transmitters, even though they had an amendment to broaden the language. And money transmitters is only moving money from here to here. It doesn't have anything to do with protecting the consumer. It protects the consumer because the money moves from one place to the other, but it doesn't protect the consumer as far as you're getting paid interest or anything like that. That would kind of be more like a banking regulator.
Well, then, can you help me with the Division of Consumer Protection of the Office of the Attorney General? That title is different than yours. Can you help me with your title so I don't?
So I'm the Maryland Securities Commissioner, or, the statute says I am, under Title 11 of Corporations and Associations. So our authority comes from the Securities Act. Because they're taking these out as securities, we will no longer have authority either to register it or bring action if there's a problem with it. And it's beyond just staking. It goes to everything involving digital assets as they're defined under the statute.
Thank you. I usually only ask 2 questions. I asked like 5 that time. Thank you. I apologize.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions for this panel. Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Going to take.
All right, that ends the bill hearing on Senate Bill 759. Next is Senate Bill 889, Consumer Protection and Labor and Employment. Senator Lamb, along with his panelists, Marcelina White, Jane Lewis, Elizabeth Bobo, and Kayla Mock.
Vice Chair, did you call Jane St. Louis?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. We just couldn't hear her in the back.
All right, good afternoon, Vice Chair, members of the Senate Finance Committee. Pleased to be here to be able to present Senate Bill 889. For the record, Clarence Lamb, Senator in District 12. Want to kick off by mentioning that this bill kind of dovetails on the governor's bill that you already heard earlier this session, which I do continue to support. And the reason we're continuing to bring this forward is because we believe that there is value in potentially exploring a broader conversation about surveillance outside of grocery stores and through the use of personal data in setting wages. As technology continues to be further integrated into our lives, it has become easier for businesses to collect data and use that data to set individualized pricing based on each consumer's ability to pay. There have been reports, for example, of Instacart experimenting with using consumer data to manipulate prices. There are also instances of, reported instances of rideshare companies using battery data on individuals' cell phones to charge customers more. Essentially, if their cell phone is showing that their battery state is below a certain amount, that they may get charged more. Companies are not trying to save customers money or be more efficient. From our perspective, they're seeking to squeeze out the maximum price possible from these customers. This bill, Senate Bill 889, would mitigate these growing threats of price surveillance by requiring non-electronic shelving labels in food retail locations, a tool that could be used to engage in price surveillance. The bill would also prohibit the use of collected personal data to set prices. Certainly recognize that the opposition will claim that they don't use personal data to increase prices, only using it for discount programs. But still have some of these concerns about how this data is being used. So I'm more than open to amendments to clarify that, but so far, despite opportunities to work with, some of the opponents have not seen any updated language. The bill adds as well prohibitions on surveillance wages. So on the other side of the equation here, which is similarly growing in usage and concerns by employers to be able to keep hard-earned money out of Marylanders' pockets. Businesses could use hidden algorithms to figure out the lowest wage they can offer an employee, leading to pay that varies for workers that do the same work. So our bill would also ensure that Marylanders are paid due to their work, not to any other immutable characteristics or algorithms or data that's being used to gauge what an employee or potential employee's willingness to tolerate a certain wage is. Our bill aims to address issues raised in earlier conversations by maintaining strict, clear carve-outs for loyalty programs that may lower prices for specific customers and align more closely with the terms established by the Maryland Online Data Privacy Act. The paper price tag, which we've seen on shelves, is something that we oftentimes take for granted. It was invented decades ago by John Wanamaker, the founder of the now defunct department store, in response to concerns about customers experiencing price discrimination. The concern here now today with a lot of the technology we're seeing is that this technology has made it easier for businesses to obscure how one might charge certain customers compared to others. So certainly open to ideas on how to strike the right balance here, but I do believe it is important we ensure baseline protections for consumers and for workers on the surveillance wage side. So with that, ask the committee for consideration of favorable report on SB 889. Happy to turn over to other members of the panel and then take questions at the end. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Elizabeth Bobo. I am the Legislative Director at the Maryland State and DC AFL-CIO. At its core, surveillance pricing is in fact a predatory practice, and it is very real. You will hear from the opponents that it is not a real practice. The FTC actually had opened an investigation into Kroger a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, that study was not finished because under the new administration, but they did open that investigation up a couple of years ago. The way that surveillance pricing works is that grocery stores can buy data from a third party to surveil on customers to manipulate prices into what they think that they should buy. This is discrimination by algorithm at its core and should not be allowed in our state. I understand that other states are weighing the issue and introducing similar pieces of legislation around the country to address surveillance pricing in different ways. So this is a growing concern across the country and other legislatures as well. So Maryland must act now to tamp down on this predatory practice so consumers are protected, workers are protected, and everyone shares in a fair market. So for those reasons, I urge a favorable report on SB 889. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Marceline White, Executive Director of Economic Action Maryland. You have our testimony, our written testimony. We're here in strong support of Senate Bill 889. all session, you all have heard about affordability issues and the need to address affordability. And this does so in two ways, by addressing the cost of items as well as wage discrimination. We believe these aspects are needed. When we did a survey of 500 Marylanders, 80% that we surveyed said they were struggling not only with grocery prices, but with the cost of housing, insurance, healthcare, and more. At its core, Senate Bill 889 is about transparency and accountability. It's a key concern of this committee, making sure the market works and that the market is competitive. We've heard about how surveillance pricing has been used in setting grocery store prices. Another FTC report released in 2025 talked about location and browser history movements, and even the items in a cart that you do not end up getting are all used to create micro data, which sets different prices for the cost of goods for individuals. And I think we can all agree that I should pay the same price for my bag of potatoes as Ms. Bobo. There shouldn't be differences in those kinds of prices. Otherwise, you distort the market. In the same way, wages have been used, algorithms have been used to set different wage differentials, which again distorts the market. We need access to clear, free, and the same kind of transparent information to make decisions. So we believe this bill goes a long way towards doing that. And for these reasons, we urge passage of SB 889. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jane St. Louis. I have worked in the grocery retail for 33 years as a pricing coordinator, and I am a proud member of the UFCW Local 400. For more than 3 decades, my job has been making sure prices in the store are accurate and fair for customers. Maryland families deserve to know that when they walk into a store, the price they see is transparent and fair. I understand companies say that these systems improve efficiency, but from the perspective of someone who has worked in the grocery store for more than 3 decades, the reality of the store floor can look very different. A good friend of mine, Karen Brown, works in the grocery industry for more than 38 years on the West Coast. She did everything right. She worked full-time, about 48 hours a week, had health insurance through her job. When electronic shelf labels were installed in her store, her hours went down to 10 hours a week. She lost her health insurance and much of her income, and today, now she has to DoorDash to make up the cost. Karen's story is not unique. Opponents say workers can simply move to another department, but the reality in today's stores is there is no extra departments and there are no extra hours. When the hours disappear, the jobs disappear too. Grocery stores have always been part of our community. If we replace workers with algorithms and automation, we risk losing the human connection that makes these communities work. Surveillance pricing may be driven by algorithms, but the consequences are felt by real workers and real customers. Technology should make life better for people, not replace them. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Kayla Mock, and I'm here on behalf of our members at the United Food and Commercial Workers Union Local 400. I want to thank Senator Lamb and his team for the leadership on this issue. We are back once again to talk about surveillance pricing. I want to focus on brick and mortar stores, as that's where our members are, and how surveillance pricing infiltrates these spaces by using electronic labels. Companies will tell you that they're already using personalized data to influence prices with apps and coupons. These companies are also heavily investing in tech to bring this practice into brick and mortar stores. Electronic labels are a piece of the technology puzzle, along with facial recognition cameras and customer tracking software integrated with compiled data profiles to allow brick and mortar stores to change prices instantly. You've just heard how electronic labels will impact workers' jobs. I will also say union workers have an advantage. They have collective bargaining where they can push back, and we're still seeing harm to them. Non-union workers are at the discretion and will of their employer. ESLs are also not good for consumers. It creates a lack of transparency and frustration. Different customers should also not be charged different prices based on wants or needs. We've heard that companies are only using data to drive prices down, that grocery stores run on a razor-thin margin. I agree with that and would argue that's a reason why they would implement this to maximize prices. Companies state that they drive prices down to attract shoppers, but what happens when the transparency is gone and the prices are no longer set by the store and the item, but by the consumer profile? Consumers won't know what everyone else is paying, and they certainly won't know when they are being price gouged. And so paper tags are the best contract a store can offer on prices for consumers and the workers, and so for that, we urge a favorable report.
Are there any questions of this panel? Seeing none, thank you all so very much. Next, we're going to hear from the unfavorable panel of Margaret Durkin, Kaylee Locklear, Brianna January, and then we'll hold there for a virtual favorable and after this panel is done.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Hayes and members of the committee. My name is Margaret Durkin, and I'm the Mid-Atlantic Executive Director for TechNet, a tech trade association. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today on Senate Bill 889. TechNet recognizes that automated systems raise complex and evolving policy questions, and we do not condone the targeting of consumers based on factors such as race and religion. States have been carefully studying this issue. Similar proposals have been withdrawn after bipartisan deliberation. You have my written remarks, so I will speak to some high-level issues. The definition of surveillance-based price setting is broad, and then the bill subsequently prohibits such practices. These practices have been used responsibly to support marketing, pricing, and other data-driven decisions that enhance the consumer experience and promote competition. And in some cases, this type of data is used to lower prices for consumers. We're also concerned how this bill will impact discounts and promotions and incentives and win-back discounts for hesitant or returning consumers. We're also concerned about the private right of action. And I would like to note that last year, California considered AB 446, and after several months of deliberation, the sponsor ended up narrowing his bill and then consequently withdrew his bill. Our neighbors in Virginia also considered House Bill 121 just this session, and that bill is effectively defeated for the year. We understand the intent of this bill, but remain concerned about unintended consequences. I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Mr. Vice Chair, esteemed committee, Brianna January with Center Left Tech Trade Association Chamber of Progress in respectful opposition to SB 889. Committee, earlier this session, you heard me testify on the kinds of discounts and savings that are threatened by bills like this one, including personalized coupons, rewards, win-back and retention programs, and many more. Those all still apply here under this bill, but SB 889 goes far beyond the others that this committee has already considered. While other bills are limited to just grocers, SB 889 applies to all consumer goods and services across every single sector. In practice, this means that not only your grocery discounts are at risk, but so are your personalized savings for things like clothes, furniture, housewares, makeup and toiletries, even gym and fitness services. Marylanders are already struggling with basic costs of living every single day, and we understand the sponsor's concerns, but this bill would have a dramatic and opposite effect on affordability for Marylanders. Again, not only on groceries, but on every single product and service in the state that uses personalized data to help Marylanders save. The cumulative costs of this bill would further drive Maryland residents and businesses away from our great state instead of improving affordability, which is everyone's ultimate goal. The reality is that personalized discounts, coupons, and loyalty rewards that Maryland families use every day to manage their household budgets would simply disappear under the bill. With that, please reject SB 889, and we look forward to working with the committee. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chair and honorable members of the committee. Kaylee Locklear here on behalf of the Maryland Retailers Alliance. We are in opposition to this bill. So in full disclosure, this is now the 5th time that I've testified on legislation similar to this bill between both of the chambers. We understand the goal, and we do support eliminating individual data price increases. And again, I think it's important to start by reminding the committee of the comprehensive data privacy law that you all passed in 2024. That law already governs how businesses, from large technology companies to the smallest of retailers, can collect and use consumer data. Businesses can collect data pending that they disclose they're doing so and that there is an opt-out. Our industry, though, operates differently in an important way. Retail and grocery loyalty programs are opt-in. Consumers voluntarily sign up because they want savings, and retailers use that information to provide data-driven discounts, not to raise prices. Our goal is to retain and attract customers by offering the discounts they are actively seeking. And we're actually impressed that this bill looked at the bigger picture because every entity is allowed to collect data, and we did meet with the sponsor and talk to him about that. But with that said, I want to make it clear, we've engaged in a good faith throughout this entire process. We have shared red line language on numerous proposals with this committee, the governor's office, and the speaker, who has legislation in this area as well. While we believe the broader conversation should always include practices across many industries, we are not opposed to legislation in this space if it aligns with the current framework already established under Maryland's data privacy laws and allows retailers to continue providing discounts that help their consumers manage costs. At a time when affordability is a top priority, the ability to offer data-driven savings is something we should all support, and I'm glad to answer any questions the committee has. Thank you.
Senator Reedy.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Maybe clearly I'll ask you this because it's more germane, I think, to you guys. I'm trying to read through and look at the issue of non-digital presentation of price. So it seems to me, and if I misunderstood the intents of the sponsors and the supporters, I apologize. It seems to me it's trying to say you can't have a digital tag at all. Like I've gone into most places I go to, I still see on the shelf a sticker, but there are places where they have like a digital thing where they can update it, right? I sort of understand the idea that we don't want it tied to some system that automatically flips it and changes it on an algorithm. I don't think that's happening anywhere that we know of, but this seems like it's outlawing it just being like a digital sign. So, I mean, I don't know if, or is that your read? And I guess what would be your response to why that's a bad idea?
It is. It would be an outright ban, and I just happen to carry around in my purse one with me, so I thought I'd bring it so we could talk about this a little further. So let me start with the fact that GDPR, which is the most protective data privacy laws in the world in Europe, encourage digital tags. They are widely used in Europe. They are encouraged as the standard because of transparency and ensuring that prices are correct. They eliminate human error. So let me just start there. On average, in some of our stores, it takes up to 50 hours a week to change out tags. In a single,
I know because I used to do it when
I was going to say.
Yeah, I told that story before.
It's a job, by the way, that many despise. Some may like it. I don't. If you love it, I think that's great. But this really helps with efficiency so that our employees can focus on other tasks. There is, I need to correct some of the things that were said earlier. There is no evidence of job loss because of these tags. So if I could just talk about maybe two to answer your question. what this technology does and what it doesn't do, I think that that would be really, really helpful here. First of all, there's 7 companies in the world that manufacture these. This is a Vusion product, a company that would be glad to meet with and speak with any of you about their products. But they are completely off until a price is updated. So a corporate office or a store will make a decision, and there are many valid reasons why pricing changes, right? And that will simultaneously happen throughout that entire store. This product is not reading your retina. It is not connecting to your phone. It doesn't follow you around in any way. It is not connected to our point of sale systems. So I need to make all of that very, very, very clear. Doesn't connect to anything at all.
So no one in Maryland has that digital tag or those types of digital tag connected to their point of sale.
That is correct. That's correct. On the back of this are batteries. There are lights on the front of this, and those lights will go off for employees so that they know where to restock inventory. That's what this product does. And I finally, because I think this is really important to NIST, so the National Institute of Standards and Technology, actually worked with advocacy organizations and many blue states' attorney generals who are endorsing these products and behind the scenes pushing for them because of that transparency and level of standard that they provide. It eliminates human error with regard to differing prices. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk about it. I'm glad to bring this to anybody's office later. And the company is actually present here today, and I'm sure they'd be glad to speak to anyone as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions for this panel? Seeing none, thank you all so very much. And we have some virtual testimony from Jeremy Espinosa.
Great. Hope you can hear me. Thank you, Chair Vital, Vice Chair Hayes, and all the members of this committee for the opportunity to testify on SB 889. I'm from United Food and Commercial Workers International Union, here today in strong support of this bill. Food costs are climbing everywhere. In Maryland, they've increased 6.4% over the past year, and the average weekly grocery bill here is $266.11. This means Maryland families are paying nearly $14,000 a year to put food on the table. It's unsustainable. Many factors are responsible for this trend, but one issue can be addressed directly through this bill, and that's price gouging that's made possible by the use of surveillance-based pricing and electronic shelf labels, or ESLs. Many grocery chains are already introducing this tech, and it can allow them to squeeze consumers by preying on what they know about a customer's needs or ability to pay. Companies collect extensive data about our lives, where we go, who we live with, and retailers can use this information in a customer profile to tailor prices to individuals. Investments in this tech can allow companies to squeeze consumers for extra money and increase profits. It is not to save consumers money. Prices can already be lowered. Sales can already be offered. If this tech can be used to quickly lower prices, then it can also be used to quickly raise them. There's no way for us to know when we're getting a deal and when the store is squeezing us for every dollar they think it can get. When grocery pricing can resemble the surge-style pricing used by ride-hailing services, then it's time to address the tools that make this possible. Without this, surveillance pricing and ESLs can push grocery prices even higher. Because food's not a basic necessity, it is not unnecessary merchandise, and customers should be able to rely on transparent prices, and traditional printed price tags provide consumer protection. Without action, both surveillance pricing and ESLs would add pressure to already rising costs and worsen affordability challenges. I respectfully ask the committee to pass SB 889, and I thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none, this ends the bill hearing on Senate Bill 889.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Last bill of the day, Senate Bill 827, Consumer Protection and Product Liability Chatbots. And Senator Hester is here, and she's going to bring with her Kara Williams, Ben Winters, Kendall Shiroe, and there will be one virtual person, Angela Campbell.
Thank you very much, Chair Bidle, Vice Chair Hayes, members of the committee. For the record, Senator Katie Fry-Hester, here to ask for your favorable consideration of Senate Bill 827, the Curbing Harmful AI Technology Act, which expands product liability statute to include artificial intelligence products defined as chatbots. Marylanders, like all Americans, are engaging with chatbot systems on a regular basis. As you know, these chatbots are not simple search engines. They are intentionally designed to be personable and engaging to maximize use. ChatGPT, an extremely popular chatbot, prompts users upon login to choose from a selection of personalities, including friendly, nerdy, and cynical. It is remarkably easy for users to become absorbed and to feel as though they are talking to a friend or a confidant. And this can create a sense of trust that prevents them from being careful with their private information or even remembering that the system they are interacting with is non-human. This committee has done amazing work to protect children, and minors are especially vulnerable to this illusion created by chatbots. 42% of adolescents who use chatbots say they use them for companionship rather than schoolwork. A December 2025 study by the Pew Research Center reports that 68% of teens aged 15 to 17 use chatbots, and nearly 1/3 of teens across age groups say they use a chatbot every day. When our youth are conversing with AI chatbots more often than with their friends, the need for regulation is not just present, it is overdue. Already there have been documented cases of harms caused to teenagers by chatbots. In your testimony, you have a one-pager with some examples, and I just wanted to read a few to bring home the point that this is real. The first example is from Florida. A wrongful death lawsuit alleged a chatbot formed an explicit and emotionally manipulative relationship with Sewell Setzer III, a 14-year-old user. The technology he used, Character AI, acted as Character Seltzer III and enjoyed from TV. He acted as a character Seltzer enjoyed from TV and engaged in sexual role play with him that his mother characterized akin to grooming. When the teenager expressed suicidal thoughts, the chatbot encouraged them, and he urged Seltzer III to come home to her. The second example is the suicide of Adam Rain from California. Parents of a California teenager, Adam Rain, have filed a suit alleging an AI chatbot validated his suicidal ideation rather than directing him towards help, even offering to draft a suicide note for him. When Rain said he wanted to leave a noose out for his parents to see and intervene, ChatGPT told him, "Please don't leave the noose out. Let's make this the first place someone actually sees you." Soon after, Rain died by suicide at the age of 16. And so I hope these examples, there's many more, but I hope these examples illustrate the real and present danger of unsupervised and unregulated chatbot use. What Senate Bill 827 does is to establish a clear, enforceable standard for how chatbots may be designed and deployed in Maryland. With similarities to the Federal Trade Commission's inquiry into the practices of several AI companies, Senate Bill 827 is not anti-technology. It's pro-transparency, pro-accountability, and pro-consumer protection. Specifically, the bill does 5 things. First, it requires affirmative consent from consumers before their personal data may be used for training purposes, including their input data. Second, it prohibits chatbots from using a consumer's data to profile them or provide customized advertisements. Third, the bill establishes enhanced safeguards for minors under 13 by prohibiting the use of their personal data without verified parental consent. Fourth, it prohibits harmful or misleading chatbot practices, such as the provisions of unlicensed medical, legal, or financial advice. Fifth, it creates clear accountability mechanisms by requiring the Attorney General's office to promulgate regulations and authorizing them to bring an action seeking declaratory relief and authorize affected individuals to seek injunction, declaratory relief, or damages. Colleagues, momentum is building in other states to bring this type of legislation. Currently, 5 states have passed chatbot bills, including California, Maine, New Hampshire, New York, and Utah. Currently, there are 82 chatbot-related bills under consideration across the United States. There are chatbot bills pending in 27 different states, and 6 of these are very similar to the model you see before you today in this bill. Despite the prevalence of harm and widespread concern, the federal government has not taken meaningful steps to address this issue. This leaves it to states like Maryland to guard residents from the risks associated with these chatbots. In closing, colleagues, Senate Bill 827 is a crucial step in ensuring the safety and accountability of AI chatbots. By updating our product liability laws to include chatbots and establishing safety guardrails to protect user data and consumer safety, this legislation helps ensure that Marylanders, especially our youth, are not exploited for their data by misleading chatbots. It's critical that we take proactive measures to address one of the most prominent technological risks of our time, protect our vulnerable children, and responsibly adapt to ongoing technological advancements. As you might suspect, there is some opposition from industry. We are working through some of their amendments, and we'll have those to the committee shortly. But I would really ask for a favorable report on Senate Bill 827 because I feel we are at risk. With that, Madam Chair, I'd like to turn it over to my committee.
Chair Beidel, Vice Chair Hayes, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today in support of SB 827. My name is Kara Williams, and I'm an attorney at the Electronic Privacy Information Center, or EPIC. EPIC is an independent nonprofit founded over 30 years ago to secure the fundamental right to privacy in the digital age. EPIC supports this bill because chatbots are a particularly harmful technology that requires urgent attention. Chatbots are causing devastating harms to people of all ages, including mental health harms, psychosis, suicides, self-harm, violence against others, sexual exploitation, manipulation, and more. Chatbots are also leading to worsening data-driven harms, such as exploitative targeted advertising and mass overcollection of sensitive personal data. The General Assembly took a big step toward addressing some of these digital harms in 2024 by passing the Maryland Online Data Privacy Act, but further action is necessary to address chatbots' unique harms. This bill would prevent chatbot companies from abusing users' personal data, require companies to identify and address risks before they hurt people, and allow Marylanders to hold companies accountable when their products do cause these devastating harms. I'd also like to address one key thing this bill does not do. This bill does not prevent companies from advertising. Instead, the bill restricts companies from using the often sensitive information that people feed into chatbots to exploit them with advertising that targets their vulnerabilities and insecurities. For example, if a teenager confides in a chatbot that she is struggling with her body image and wants to lose weight, this bill would protect her from being inundated with ads for fad diets and GLP-1s. Advancing this bill will reduce the number of Marylanders harmed by manipulative and unsafe chatbots and will require companies to make these systems safer for everyone. EPIC urges this committee to give SB 827 a favorable report. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Chair Beidel, Vice Chair Hayes, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of SB 827. My name is Kendall Schroy, and I'm here on behalf of Design It For Us, a youth-led coalition across the U.S., including right here in Maryland, fighting to hold big tech accountable. I'm 23 years old and a part of the first generation to grow up fully online. I got my first iPhone in middle school, and by high school, social media felt like a drug, offering connection on the surface, but fueling body image issues, a fear of missing out, and a constant sense that I wasn't enough. Then the pandemic hit my freshman year of college. Overnight, our lives moved online. When we returned to campus, students were isolated and glued to their phones. And within 3 months, 3 of my classmates died by suicide. And later that year, ChatGPT was released. Suddenly, it wasn't just our attention being exploited, it was our critical thinking, our relationship with knowledge, and our sense of what is real too. Once again, young people were going to be big tech test subjects. 4 years later, it's only gotten worse. Peers are turning to chatbots for mental health support, relationship advice, grief, and identity questions, the most private moments of our inner lives. These conversations are used to train AI models that target us with ads and keep us online. These products are sycophantic by design, telling users exactly what they want to hear. We are seeing cases of psychosis, suicide, and the erosion of human connection. My own roommate calls ChatGPT her boyfriend. SB 827 addresses these harms. When someone pours their heart out to a chatbot, this bill stops companies from using that information to target them with ads. When a teenager can't tell if they're talking to a human or a machine, this bill requires companies to make that clear. When companies train their models on our most intimate thoughts, this bill bans that for minors. And when harm occurs, this bill gives people the right to hold companies accountable. Design It For Us urges you to favorably report at 827. Thank you.
All right. Kendall's a hard act to follow, but thank you so much, Chair Beadle and Vice Chair Hayes and members of the committee. My name is Ben Winters. I'm the Director of AI and Privacy at the Consumer Federation of America, or CFA. CFA is an association of over 200 nonprofit consumer organizations that was established in 1968 to advance the consumer interest through research, advocacy, and education. We urge the committee to advance SB 827, which is straightforward legislation addressing the present and future harms of AI chatbots that are currently endangering Marylanders, while protecting the promise of innovative products that can actually be made in ways that enhance people's lives without the extraction. Chatbots are really hard to avoid these days. There have been devastating instances of a chatbot encouraging suicide or violence toward a parent, and near constant sycophantic responses that keep people engaged on the platform at all costs. They exploit users through mass overcollection of personal data, targeted advertising, and manipulative design practices. The good news is that chatbots are not people. They are products made by companies that make the choices behind how it works, what it can say, and how it looks to a user. There are straightforward rules that can make them safer, and these can be implemented by chatbot providers. What we have learned from social media is that we cannot rely on promises from tech CEOs. We need clear and straightforward rules, and that's what this bill does. It's critically important not to recreate the mistake of how long lawmakers waited to address the devastating harms of social media, and we are currently at risk of sleepwalking into the same dynamic with chatbots. To underline the urgency, I really urge you to listen to Kendall, listen to additional people that will be testifying today, and review the testimony from last week's House testimony of the Crossfile, where the survivor parent of a young man who lost his life with social media talked about the urgency of this. So when federal consumer protection agencies are being dashed and defunded, this is a time where Maryland has to step up and protect its rights. And right here, this is a straightforward thing that would not ban any product, it doesn't prevent ads, just is positive. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to hear from Angela Campbell virtually. Angela, will you unmute and give us your testimony, please?
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to testify in support of Senate Bill 827. I'm testifying in the capacity as being a longtime resident of Maryland, but my views have been informed by spending over 30 years teaching at Georgetown Law, where I had the opportunity to work on issues relating to marketing to children and children's privacy. I was involved in the adoption, implementation, and enforcement of the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. I am particularly concerned about the fact that chatbots have already been incorporated into many children's toys, and we've already had many reports of problems as a result. Chatbots, for example, have told children how to find knives or how to use matches, and even, as you've heard from other people testifying, urging young people to commit suicide. Mattel, a toy giant, recently announced that it had entered into a strategic partnership with OpenAI. And so I expect we will see many more chatbots incorporated into toys in the future. So it's very important at this time that Maryland passed this important legislation that would establish a framework, an appropriate framework, and also provide incentives for chatbots to be used for the benefit of people and not to harm them. And I believe that SB 827 does this in several ways. First, it limits what personal data is collected and used without affirmative consent of the user, or in the case of children under 13, the consent of their parent. Second, it prohibits personalized advertising. these two provisions work together because allowing personalized advertising gives companies incentives to maximize user engagement. And it is this user engagement that has been associated with many harms to young people. Maximizing engagement allows the collection of more personal data and can result in even more manipulative ads. I wish I had more time to explain to you, but I do urge you to adopt this. I think it does sets up the right incentives and provides needed privacy and consumer protections.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Stay online in case there's questions for you. Senator, there's one more favorable, Anthony C., American Youth Association. Can you come up and testify? We'll have questions then for all the favorables. You can stay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Anthony C. I am the Assistant to the National President at the American Youth Association, a lifetime Maryland resident, and a 16-year-old high school student at Gonzaga College High School. I am testifying in support of Senate Bill 827 in response to AI's rapidly growing role in my life through school, politics, and everything in between. As a student growing up in the DMV, I've watched AI become a larger and more frequent part of the lives of my peers and myself. For this reason, I believe regulations like those in SB 027 are necessary. I've personally seen the risks with unregulated AI systems in regards to my peers and family, from friends being manipulated by AI chatbots and developing unhealthy dependencies on their interactions with said bots, to my family members being targeted by AI-driven scams and unfair advertising. The time to develop legislation countering these harms is now. If Maryland wants to establish itself as a nationwide leader in protecting the vulnerable from this new technology, passing SB 827 is the first step. Mental Health America ranks Maryland 40th in youth mental health, with the 2021 census finding that 22% of Maryland's youth have experienced at least one major depressive episode in the last year. Growing up in Prince George's County during COVID and attending St. Columba Middle School, many of my peers experienced mental health issues that would make them more vulnerable to negative side effects from interacting with chatbots. In a state where this is such a persistent issue, it is paramount that Maryland enact legislation like the People's AI Bill to protect our most vulnerable residents and those set to inherit our state. By requiring chatbots to explicitly identify as non-human and to clearly disclose that they cannot provide qualified medical, legal, or financial advice, the People's AI chatbot puts our most vulnerable first. The People's AI Bill lays the foundation for Maryland's future in a new age of technology. For the aforementioned reasons, I respectfully petition the committee to give SB 827 a favorable report. Thank you.
I have some questions. Let me start with Senator Guile.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator, for this bill. So I think my question is for Kara from EPIC. Yeah, hi, how are you? Hi. So I was looking at the text of the bill, and there is obviously a lot that this does here that is similar to what we passed with the Maryland Online Data Privacy Act. Is there any components of this bill that conflicts?
Thank you for the question, Senator. And I believe after also reviewing the testimony that has been submitted for today that some of the opposition will say that it conflicts with the Maryland Online Data Privacy Act. But I want to assure the committee that there's nothing in this bill that a company could not comply with on top of also complying with the Maryland Online Data Privacy Act. Many of the definitions are drawn directly from the bill. EPIC was involved in supporting the passage of that bill, so we know it well and have helped the senator make sure that it is cohesive with that important piece of legislation and that the protections in this SB 827 only build on top of what is already existing in the Maryland Online Data Privacy Act. So no, nothing would conflict.
Okay. Well, you said nothing would conflict, but there are some differences, though, right? But you're just saying that they could do that and this, right?
These just add additional protections on if a company has a chatbot, they would have to do some additional data privacy work to make sure that that more sensitive information is just as protected as information is under the Maryland Online Data Privacy Act. Okay. But there's also some provisions that are drawn directly from there, like the MODPA bans the sale of personal sensitive information, and so this bill bans the information contained in chat logs. So it's small differences, but nothing conflicts. So a company would have no problem complying with both of them.
Okay. I have just one question for Senator Hester. I was just looking at the fiscal note. I don't know if you want an opportunity to provide any. It says it's like $522,900. Did you want to respond at all to that or have any comments about that?
I would just say that I mean, as this committee knows well, the Office of the Attorney General needs funds to enforce, many of our laws, and we're currently in discussions. I mean, I think that passing the data broker registry would be a good way to get funds for that. Also, I mean, heaven forbid, one of the suicides happens, this year in the state of Maryland, and if you wanted to completely eliminate that, you could just strike that part of the bill and allow a private right of action, because right now you can't. There's no recourse for a parent. So there's multiple ways to go about this, but fundamentally, I think that we need to beef up our Office of Attorney General's Consumer Privacy Division, so that they can enforce, the Kids Code, Online Data Privacy Act, and hopefully this one as well.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Mounts?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to compliment our two witnesses, the two younger expert witnesses. When we get into this and talking, it's almost, it takes what takes me 5 minutes to understand. You all can decipher and translate in 5 seconds. It's amazing the world that you've grown up in and how how it's become part of your life. But in your testimony, when you're talking about the chat bots, there's a lot of different types of chat bots, and you would probably recognize them quicker than most of us because you've dealt with them. And what is there a specific type of chat bot that is bad versus a chat bot that is not bad, or are all chat bots bad from your perspectives?
It has a lot to do with the way that these chatbots are designed. And these specifically, like the chatbots owned by or ran by some of these big tech companies, are designed to take young people's data and keep them hooked and engaged. Where I can imagine a world where there are chatbots that are useful and help people actually complete tasks or figure out responses that aren't using their sensitive data, or they actually give them oh, hey, you're talking to a chatbot type thing. That could be useful and that wouldn't be harmful to young people. But right now, because we don't have any laws enforcing good design practices for chatbots, there are kids everywhere and adults, frankly, being deeply harmed because they're just not designed with humans in mind.
Yeah. And so it's interesting because I guess California has already put something in place to regulate this, right? And I guess the one particular issue is the companion chat box. The definition that we use, and this bill is, I was reading the bill, there's a lot of definitions. How would you define what's proposed in the bill versus what has been put in place in California? I'm not sure who would be the correct witness to address that.
I can start.
And why? And kind of what are the differences?
Yeah, so the California bill, SB 243, as well as a lot of other bills throughout the country, try to set aside specific types of chatbots that they want to regulate. Companion chatbots, or chatbots that try to say they're your girlfriend or your therapist or whatever it is. And while that is a good thing to target, and when your question about what's the worst chatbot versus a better chatbot, the companion chatbots are some of the worst ones. The problem with those types of bills is that you are trying to capture one subset of one market in a single period of time with a definition, and that makes it so it's you go in 6 months and then a company creates a chatbot that is technically maybe not a companion chatbot, but will still have the same problem. So that's why we don't go down the route that a lot of bills are doing, where they try to take one segment of chatbot, companion chatbots, and ban them entirely. We try to create attributes attributes and regulations that that apply to all chatbots. So regardless of what it looks like, it will be safer. It won't take your data. It won't. So like the attributes of the safe chatbots can be done for any of them, and that's why this bill is a little bit more general, because it actually makes it more flexible and allows us to not have bans and make it a little bit more complicated for the companies here.
Yeah, is that it? I'm sorry. Yeah. Oh. Well, yeah, make it quick, though. We'll allow one witness for a question.
Oh, yes, Senator. In response to your first question, asking if there's any particular chatbot that's bad or good, the way I would look at it is they're tools, and a tool can, when unregulated, pose a problem or pose an unintended side effect. So don't think of it as in, oh, these specific chatbots, so say companion bots, are inherently more risky than other bots. Think of it as if, the best analogy I could use, like we were talking about potatoes earlier, is think of them like cars, and we're asking you to install brakes,
Yeah, but brake, and that was going to be my next question, because you've seen there's some concerns about the way the bill's drafted, and some of the chats are used in certain circumstances, where in the case of using video games, not many people know it, but Senator Johnny has been known to get on a video game every now and then, and and the last thing you want to do in the middle of an action scene, with Madden, you're doing football or something like that, you have to stop the game to sign off and get approvals and things like that. I mean, don't you think? Do you see that there should be some carve out or protection for some of those situations?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a difference. The bill may be vague about it, but I think there's definitely a difference between language model bots, like the types you're responding to, and basic AI, like pathfinders in the video games you're speaking of.
Yeah, and I believe that in chat, the bots are used in many different ways, but I just wanted to flesh that out with you a little bit. And it's terrible, I'm going to do this, but like the kids, when I'm talking to them, one good thing to say is like, okay, chat, right? Just had to get that on the record.
Just briefly, I defer to Senator Hester here, but I think that's one of the amendments that we're working with and trying to figure out. That makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Hester, for this bill and the thoughtful discussion for the panel. I was going to ask another question, but let me start with you, young man. What's your name?
My name's Anthony, Senator.
Anthony, yeah, you mentioned tools, right? And
yes,
I
Senator.
was thinking about tools. So computer is a tool that we can use in our lives to do different things. Let's look at, like, say, a hammer, right? I mean, think of all the things you can do with a hammer, right? I can build a house with it or smash someone over the head with it, right? So you talk about the use of these tools, and you think about, say, freedom of speech. If we kind of regulate the use of this computer tool, do you think we're limiting someone's ability to use a technology? Just like a hammer, we can use that hammer to do great things like build a house, which I've done, versus I've never hit someone over the head with a hammer. So where do we as a society draw the line with freedom of choice, tools available, and basically everyone understanding if you use a chat box, and they say, hey, go jump off the Key Bridge, or not the Key, the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, that's like stupid, that's nonsense, right? Where do we draw the line between individuals being vulnerable and they need, say, other help versus just controlling the tools, make the tools not available to certain people to do certain things?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what we said about First Amendment, freedom of speech, as you know, First Amendment, it applies to the human. It doesn't apply to the robot. And what the bill is going for, it's not limiting what the human can say to the bot in any way. It's not. It doesn't say, oh, if a person drags a conversation in this direction, they suddenly cannot use the service. It doesn't do that. It more so it regulates the bot's responses to avoid damage. And the best way I could liken that to is you talked about the hammer rule, and I'm sure the house you built was phenomenal. But
it still is, yes, sir.
I'm sure, Senator.
30 years, still standing.
I'm glad. Hey, I've never built a house, so.
Yeah, well, talk to me later about that, will you?
Yes, Senator.
Okay.
But the way I would view it, you have this hammer, and so you have a hammer saying, okay, I have it, and there's laws, I can go build a house with it, like you said, but I can't hit someone with it, right? And so the way I'm looking at the chatbot situation and its freedom of speech, we have laws for therapists, right? If you're a licensed therapist and if you give intentionally bad and manipulative advice to worsen the state of your client, you will have your license removed and you'll be possibly tried. So this is the same type of protection as that, except it's not against a person, it's against a machine. And I understand that it's sometimes hard to visualize because it's such a new technology.
I can visualize it all right. I've been in this technology since I was an officer in the Air Force many, many moons ago, right? And so the thing is, I can imagine that because all this technology is programmed by people, right? And even with our vast boasting about AI, you put some technical math problems in there and it just falls apart, right? AI is bad with math. My son, a graduate student at Brown University, working as a PhD mathematician, he's great with math, right? AI, what we boast about, is terrible with math. It's a piece of crap, right? And I see like a lot of heads saying, yes, yes, yes. So why do we really even think that someone can program and anticipate someone's thoughts or questions into this to give back a good reaction, a good answer, right? When they can't even program advanced, algebra in AI, right?
Right. Well, chatbots as of now have content filters, right? And so I can't speak to this fully because admittedly I'm not a software engineer, but developing a chatbot, it's less coding it in terms of, I'm going to have it say this thing when it gets in this setting, or I'm going to have it say this thing to divert the conversation away from a potentially unhealthy area. It's more you can add content filters to it, right?
But those content filters are programmed in by programmers, and it's still ones and zeros that actually goes in the code, and it's anticipatory, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And so how can you anticipate someone's questions? I mean, if I want to find out, say, about a religious organization that might not be mainstream, can programmers say, hey, that might cause someone to go off the deep end, and the programmers kind of program that out? I mean, where can we draw the line? And I think it's a question because AI doesn't program itself. AI is something that's out there that you have humans behind putting all these things in. And a lot of these AI programs are so very, very, very discriminatory. I mean, you go through the airport, if you have a certain complexion going through TSA or coming through global entry, it's like you take a picture of a dark-skinned person, it's just a dark blot. I mean, it's programmed by humans, and it's intentional. And it's just really intentional, and they know what they're doing. So basically, how can we even say we will control this? And I'm not sold on the technology, and I don't think we can do it, and we'll be infringing on people's freedom of speech. And that's my opinion, being in the technology sector for many, many years. I have just issues with that. Basically, we think we can control it, but I think it's uncontrollable, basically. And people have to understand garbage in still is garbage out, right? And AI put a lot of garbage in, and a lot of garbage comes out based on people's religion, people's race, people's gender. I mean, we see that all the time in a lot of examples.
Senator, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do I have any other questions for this panel? Okay, that ends this panel. We're going to bring up two favorable with amendments, Evan Richardson, Carrington Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Carrington Anderson here on behalf of the Maryland Association of County in support of the bill with amendments. You have our written testimony. Counties do support the intent of the bill and do appreciate the impactful testimony that the previous panel just gave. So counties' chatbots are internal, external. We have different types. They're designed to support government officials, employees, and constituents. Our amendment is to is a carve-out to ensure the bill's provisions don't unnecessarily or unintentionally hinder local government operations. Counties are increasingly moving towards the use of AI-powered chatbots to support the use of 311 and non-emergency 911 systems. The technology is actively being piloted in counties right now for 311, and there are counties are exploring grants for non-emergency for 911, as well as other critical public service systems. We just want to make sure that the legislation doesn't prevent counties from effectively adopting these chatbots that are aiming to increase access to public information and services. Local government chatbots are very different from private sector chatbots or ChatGPT. One example of that would just be that local government chatbot is only pulling from the county website. It's not the entire universe. Happy to work with the sponsor and the committee and open to any discussion there. Thanks.
And thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. Record, my name is Evan Richards on behalf of the Maryland Bankers Association. We are favorable with amendments on Senate Bill 827, and our ask is simply to keep this language in line with the Online Data Privacy Act from 2024 and adding in the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act exemption. The one thing that I'll note, again, with banks and insurance companies is that they are subject to comprehensive regulatory framework at the federal level. And not too long ago, even the Office of the Comptroller and the Currency, along with the Federal Reserve, came out and basically told banks across the country that they need to be testing their chatbot responses. They need to be monitoring accuracy. They need to maintain human escalation in case there is an issue. And they need to immediately correct misleading outputs. Banks could be subject to unfair, deceptive trade practices, and also, the regulatory investigations, civil penalties, and consumer restitution. So with that being said, again, in favor with amendments asking for the exemption. Happy to answer any questions.
I don't see any questions, but thank you very much for your testimony. We now have 4 unfavorables. Margaret Durkin, Kelly Locklear, Brianna January, and Andrew Zirkle.
Madam Chair, esteemed committee, Brianna January with Chamber in Progress and Respectful Opposition. Committee, to be clear, we aren't suggesting that industry cannot comply with such a law, but we are saying that the broad nature of this bill and the conflicting definitions have unintentional consequences. Our concerns here are with the approach, not the intention of the bill. As drafted, SB 827 would cover any chatbot tool that asks a follow-up question. The good senator earlier alluded to the fact that there are differences in chatbot tools. Well, SB 827 would cover all of them. A chatbot tool that is simply used by a retailer to help you track your package, or a second language chatbot, for example, that you're practicing Spanish with, but you're going back and forth. Those follow-up questions are covered under the bill. Or a math tutor chatbot where you have to ask a clarifying question, again, covered by the bill. And getting to Senator Giles' question earlier, this bill does conflict with MADPRA, in our opinion, in that the definitions are not uniform, and SB 827 would create essentially a whole second set of data rules to comply with. It wouldn't just add on to existing law, as the former panel suggested. In doing so, this is not confusing just for industry, but also for Marylanders that use these tools, as well as for public enforcement for these laws. We agree that the bill's notion that AI chatbots should never misrepresent services coming from licensed professionals, but we're really concerned with the overbroad nature of the bill, especially around financial, legal, and medical advice. These definitions in the bill are so broad that they make no distinction between unauthorized practices versus mundane information sharing, like helping you figure out your hospital bill or helping you put your legal agreement into plain terms. The bill is just simply too broad and it's unworkable. We ask for an unfavorable report at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, honorable members of the committee. For the record, Kaylee Locklear here on behalf of the Maryland Retailers Alliance. We are in opposition to this bill, and I want to be clear that we do support targeted safeguards, including clear AI disclosures, protections for children's data, and reasonable security standards. However, this bill goes far beyond documented harms, and it risks Maryland's access to beneficial technology. So to begin, I want to focus on 4 different areas of this bill. It imposes an unprecedented strict liability standard. Operators, which are what we are as retailers, could be held liable even if we exercise reasonable care and did not directly distribute the chatbot. That creates unlimited exposure for interactions with general purpose tools, which again are our bots, and the definition is very broad and needs to change. The bill's requirement for monthly safety testing with published findings is operationally infeasible. AI systems process millions of conversations across unlimited topics, making meaningful comprehensive monthly testing just flat out impossible. And putting such an obligation on the operator, not the developer, on the operator doesn't make sense. I also want to point out advertising restrictions are removed. There are advertising restrictions in the bill, and they remove a key revenue model for free services without any evidence of harm. Consumers, and we talked about this before, benefit from targeted advertising as opposed to random ads. And finally, the bill introduces new data definitions and consent standards that do conflict with the Maryland Online Privacy Act. I did just email some of that information to folks on the committee. That creates inconsistency and compliance confusion. So for these reasons, we urge reconsideration of the bill. I do want to point out to you on the House side, there is a bill that deals with suicidal ideations. We have been redlining that bill. That's something we'd ask the committee to look at. That's a very good piece of legislation mimicked after California. Thank you.
Good afternoon, committee members. For the record, Andrew Zirkle here on behalf of the Maryland Tech Council, here in respectful opposition to Senate Bill 827. I'd like to thank the chair and the committee for the opportunity to testify today. To be clear, we appreciate the intent behind this legislation. And we do support reasonable safeguards for AI chatbots, including clear disclosures for when users are interacting with AI, strong protections for children's data, and appropriate security measures. However, we believe that this bill is overly broad, operationally challenging, and a bit premature. I'll start off by saying last session, the Tech Council supported the creation of the Work Group on Artificial Intelligence, a group tasked with studying AI adoption and contemplating many aspects of the technology that this bill seeks to regulate. We believe that moving forward on such an important topic without the work group's findings could risk unintended consequences and a need to come back and revise some of the hard work that we're doing. As drafted, some of the other opponents have pointed out concerns, specifically compliance concerns with the recently passed MODPA. We share those concerns. One brief example is that it introduces an entirely different affirmative and written parental consent requirements. That's just one example. Companies who just reconfigured their systems to comply with MODPA would have to do so again. We also have some concerns with vague definitions, specifically talking about advice, whether it's legal or medical advice. That's an important sort of cornerstone in the bill, yet advice essentially goes undefined. You know, if you asked a large language model for assistance in understanding in plain English, your lease, does that count as legal advice? This ambiguity creates legal risks and could limit educational or informational uses. And finally, it was touched on briefly by the last sponsor, but we have, or the last opponent, but we have some issues with the restrictions on advertising, and we have concerns that it could restrict access to important models with informational or educational value. With all of that considered, we respectfully ask for an unfavorable report on this bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Beidel and members of the committee. Margaret Durkin with TechNet here to speak in opposition to Senate Bill 827. Like former panelists, we agree with the spirit of the bill. However, we do have concerns which are outlined in my written remarks that I submitted and also were largely covered by former panelists. I will add that we are concerned about the private right of action in the bill as well as the punitive damages, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Senator Guile?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know who may be the best to answer this. I don't know, maybe Margaret. Sorry to cut you. You're so good. So, I mean, I was just looking at some of what the testimony and, you know, what the bill does. And I'm just curious, are there certain things that this bill seeks to do? And I realize that there's some differences of language. Are some of these things being restricted as it is right now? For example, like requiring affirmative consent from consumers before their personal data may be used for training purpose. I don't know as far as what AI, like what's already being required, or like is the harm that's sought to address, do we already have laws in place to protect some of this or no?
In Maryland specifically, I would defer back to the underlying statute, unfair and deceptive trade practices, for any consumer complaints. In terms of chatbot bills that are in law, someone mentioned the companion chatbot bills from California and New York. Those are very much a targeted approach with definitions that are tailored to address specific harms related to some of the concerns that were raised prior. But I would circle back to the Maryland statute related to unfair practices.
Okay. Because some things I see like enumerated, like number 4 prohibits harmful or misleading chatbot practices. You're saying such as the provision of unlicensed medical, legal, or financial advice. I mean, obviously, like that, we have existing, probably, I would assume, some consumer protections in place on that.
Yes, we do. And I can, if you want me to speak to some of these, I'm
Sure.
glad to. So I think we've identified, and I did send you 6 different areas that directly conflict in this bill. So in the chatbot bill, it says we must provide Maryland-specific crisis resources. We are restricted under existing law collecting precise location data unless it's strictly necessary. So we couldn't comply to that. As an example, you brought up affirmative consent. Chatbot specific consent framework means companies would have to comply with what's in the bill and then what's currently in law as well. And the conflict there is the opt-in for sensitive data. I'm glad to share all this with the committee too, because we did go through and identified all these different areas. Just restrictions in general on selling or sharing chat logs. Our current law already regulates selling personal data, processing consumer data, and sharing with processors. But the chatbot bill creates a separate category that's inconsistent with the definitions we already created around personal data versus chat data. So that's another area that we're going to have to flesh out. There's reporting and monitoring requirements that are different. We have data minimization rules in our existing law, but the chatbot then requires monitoring and logging and reporting user behavior. So again, that's at odds. I talked about strict liability earlier, and there are different definitions of personal data that are found in the chatbot bill versus our existing law.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Kaylee.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Wow. Sorry. Good job, Kaylee. Any other questions for this panel? Oh, your light's on. Senator Hershey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kaylee, you mentioned a bill that was in the House 952 that focused more on the companion chatbots, right? And
Exactly.
I think that's, in hearing everything that we've heard, I think everybody would be more focused on really trying to gear legislation towards that. Can you just maybe talk a little bit more about what that bill is doing? And so
Absolutely. So that bill is focused on minors and these very concerning conversations that have gone on with children. And so that bill is very targeted. The definitions that are in that bill mimic California. We did have some amendments to it and are still working on that bill. There are still some concerns around private rights of action and things like that. But that bill is the closest, I think, that we're going to get to addressing the child issue. And so we've been working on that bill.
Would the industry and government pretty much seem to be okay with all of that? Is that what you're hearing?
My organization has been working on that bill, and so we will end up being neutral or supportive of that bill. Others may have other concerns.
And I can weigh in on behalf of Chamber of Progress. We're hearing that that will be amended closer to the Utah model, which all of industry seemed to have actually landed in a place of neutrality. We didn't even weigh in on that bill because it was so tailored.
Margaret?
I would have to check on that Utah model, but we've seen similar legislation in California and New York that was passed, and TechNet, not in Maryland, but in Pennsylvania, we're currently neutral on the companion chatbot bill for minors. So there is a path forward.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I was just looking at that bill. I don't see the fiscal note like this bill has. The Senate bill has a significant fiscal note. I don't see one on the House bill. Am I missing it? Okay. Thank you, Senator. I don't see any other questions. Thank you to this panel. We have 5 or 6 favorable, and I'm going to start with Bea Bernstein. Unmute and give us your testimony, please. I'm sorry, can you unmute and give us your testimony, please, Gail? I think you're unmuted. I don't see your symbol.
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you.
Hi. Good afternoon. I'm Guy Bernstein, a law professor at Seton Hall Law School. I'm also the author of the book Unwired: Gaining Control Over Addictive Technologies. I'm testifying in support of SB 827. We've heard a lot of talk today about the reach of the bill, but I think not enough about the broad impact of AI bots on public health. I want to emphasize that many AI bots easily become AI companion bots. We thought that ChatGPT was designed to give information. It turns out it befriends kids and convinces them to kill themselves. AI companion bots impose public health threats to users in 3 ways. First, AI companion bots lack guardrails. Some convince users to commit suicide, harm themselves, or even induce psychosis. Second, AI companions, just like social media, are deliberately designed to be addictive and to keep users on for as long as possible. This means spending time with AI bots instead of having human interaction. Third, children are at risk of preferring easy friendship and intimate relationships with bots and never developing normal social skills. Quite a few AI companion bills and laws address the guardrails issue, but the public health threat is actually much broader. Addictive features and the threat to children's development of social skills would exacerbate the existing loneliness epidemic. Loneliness has a well-documented major impact on health. It has a similar impact to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It increases the risk for premature death by 26%. These risks begin early. Social isolation in childhood is associated with increased cardiovascular risk factors in adulthood. SB 827 has tools to address the full spectrum of public health issues. Importantly, the bill imposes a duty on a chatbot provider to ensure that the chatbot does not cause injury. It also makes the chatbot provider liable for harm caused. This creates incentives for chatbot providers to make sure that chatbots do not cause any harms, including the harms caused by design features that exacerbate loneliness. SB 827 can provide a comprehensive solution to the public health harms of AI companion bots. For this reason, I urge you to favorably report this bill. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Jay, would you like to go next? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jay Jessima, and I'm a co-founder of the Transparency Coalition. We're a nonpartisan organization dedicated to ensuring that as AI scales, it does so with guardrails necessary to protect our most vulnerable children, our most vulnerable citizens, our children. I have over 30 years of experience in the tech industry and have a PhD from the University of Washington. Material to this bill, I spent 9 years running a technology startup that helped advertisers profile and target advertising on platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and other platforms. We also helped pass California SB 243 last year, and in recent weeks have worked to pass robust chatbot safety bills, most recently in Washington State and then also in Oregon. We're also involved in supporting bills that seek to regulate chatbots in dozens of other states. Our industry colleagues have shared a number of observations about developments in other states. I'd be happy to answer questions and set the record straight if you really want to know what happened. I think I want to highlight 2 areas in response to earlier questions. One is that chatbots are designed to behave this way. Industry employs systematic practices around the training of these chatbots, and this training goes into all types of chatbots, general purpose chatbots included. So the vast majority of the cases you hear are resulting from the use of general purpose chatbots as companions, not just companion chatbots. The second thing is there was a comment made about how safety testing is too onerous. I mean, if you even talk to someone, if you ever call a call center, the first thing you hear is this call may be recorded. And you know that they're going to be talking to them about how well they did or didn't do. Why are chatbots so special? Today, there was a case filed in British Columbia because OpenAI failed to adequately safety test and respond to a situation. What we really need to do is change the industry incentives and give them a reason to actually make better and safer product decisions. This bill will help you do that. Please pass it.
Thank you, Jay. Next, we're going to do Brendan Beaufort. Brendan?
Hi, thanks so much for having me. My name is Brendan Beaufort. I'm staff attorney at Fair Play, which is a national nonprofit dedicated to children's online safety and privacy, and I'm here to offer strong support of SB 827. I could talk again and reiterate all of the extreme harms that we are starting to see chatbots cause in young people in particular, from obsessive use to sexual exploitation, violence against others, self-harm, suicide, etc. But what I want to do is respond to some of the comments that have happened with regard to previous witnesses. So the first thing I want to talk about are, I want to touch on the discussion about the First Amendment that happened earlier and be very clear about one thing. This chatbot bill does not require any expression, and it doesn't deal with any content-specific regulations. Part of the benefit of scoping a chatbot bill to include all chatbots is that we aren't trying to say that a particular company must apply the regulations based on what their chatbot is saying, nor do we give any specific requirements to chatbot providers about the need to say or not say certain things. All we are doing is offering common sense guardrails related to the way that chatbot providers can use data that they are taking from kids in order to perpetrate harms on them in a way that is consistent across many other industries and many other privacy laws, including MACPA. So there is no speech implicated in this case. I want to also specifically talk about the argument that this is broad. We are covering all chatbots because the things that we are requiring under this bill are not onerous and shouldn't be done, even in the case of customer service bots. We don't want our customer service bots pretending to be human, misleading people. We don't want our customer service bots profiling a user's emotional vulnerabilities, and we don't want them using targeted ads. And then last, on the issue of targeted ads, it was asserted earlier that targeted ads have not caused harm. I would ask this committee to consider the experience that we've had with social media. The more data that a chatbot provider can collect, the more money it can make selling ads, which incentivizes those chatbot providers to make these products manipulative and emotionally problematic in the first place. So those targeted ads is a serious thing that this committee needs to address in order to make these chatbots developed in a safe way in the first place. For those reasons, I would support the committee, please giving a favorable reading for SB 827. Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan. Betsy Teo.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Betsy Tao, and I am the Technology Committee Chair of the MCC PTA and the State Lead of Distraction-Free Schools. Today, I'd like to share with you 3 points for you to consider from my perspective as a PTA parent. First of all, AI chatbots are already all over school-issued devices, which most students carry around all day instead of books. I discovered this when my daughter told me she was trolling a chatbot called Flexi in class. These chatbots are showing up as software updates on multiple platforms and apparently can't be turned off by the school district. Second, even before AI chatbots showed up, parents were already worried their kids were playing games and watching YouTube on school devices. Now we also have to worry about chatbots lacking any accountability framework. More and more studies are coming out showing that overuse of tech in general, especially generative AI, is detrimental to kids' learning and mental health, and yet students are inundated with this harmful tech at school and parents are powerless to stop it. Third, outside the classroom, the way kids are using chatbots should terrify all of us. Nearly 3 in 4 teens have used AI as companions, which is no surprise as kids are on devices outside of school for 6 to 8 hours a day. Tech companies poured billions into maximizing engagement on social media, leading to a mental health crisis and a loneliness epidemic. And now, in a dystopian twist, those same companies are selling the solution to the problems they created, chatbots designed to maximize attachment. It should surprise no one that these chatbots are already driving kids to suicide and youth are yet again the primary victims to unregulated tech. This bill rightfully puts the burden on companies to design their products so they are not exploitative and unsafe. It sets clear liability standards and provides strong enforcement mechanisms to hold companies accountable when their products cause harm. For these reasons, I urge you to issue a favorable report for Senate Bill 827. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Did I understand you to say that chatbots are on equipment that children are getting from school, like their iPads and stuff?
Yes, school Chromebooks have now many chatbots that have proliferated on pre-approved platforms.
Is that like the school pays less for the equipment because there's chatbots there to, no?
I don't know how it impacts costs, but it appears to be a software update on many pre-approved platforms. Even Britannica Online now has a chatbot.
Okay, that's very interesting. I appreciate your testimony. Thank you, Betsy. And finally, we have William Agnew. William, there you go, ready to testify.
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Dr. William Agnew. I'm a postdoctoral fellow at Carnegie Mellon University, where I study AI ethics and AI policy. Prior to this, I received my PhD in computer science from the University of Washington. My statements here do not represent the opinions of my employer or funders. I urge the committee to give this bill a favorable report. I recently worked with an interdisciplinary team of researchers to understand the risks and harms of AI chatbots implicated in delusions, mental health harms, and self-harm. We ran tens of thousands of tests on commercial chatbots, including ChatGPT. We also analyzed the chat logs of more than 20 people who reported psychological harms from chatbots. We found that chatbots often encourage self-harm, harm to others, and pull users into delusional spirals. Some of these users later died by suicide or even murdered others. Almost all users knew full well that they were not talking to a human. However, almost all users in my research believe that their AI chatbot companions were conscious, that they had personalities, and that in some cases they were super intelligent or otherwise had other fictional capabilities. These false beliefs about the sentience and capabilities of AI chatbots form core parts of their subsequent delusional spirals with an excessive use of AI chatbots. While I support this bill, I worry that the current bill does not restrict AI from representing itself as sentient or having fictional capabilities and will be less effective as a result. I propose amending the following language in section 14-5105A, where it says the developer shall establish and an operator shall provide to a user of the operator's chatbot clear and conspicuous warnings that chatbots are artificially generated, not human, and adding sentient or conscious using and then fall, etc. Amending in sentient or conscious to section 14-5105A will further mitigate harm from AI chatbots in line with current research without placing excessive restrictions on AI deployers. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Do I have any questions? Anything for William? No. Thank you very much. And that ends the hearing on Senate Bill 827. Members, give Tammy about 5 minutes and we'll be ready to vote. Thank you.